Chapter 23. Chapter 23. Ever since Jiang Hao had met senior sister Yun Ruo, he always wanted to appraise the people he met. He felt very paranoid, like there were spies in every corner. The result of appraisal appeared in his mind. True disciple. His status is higher than mine, Jiang Hao sighed. Fortunately, there weren't any rules about calling a true disciple senior brother. Otherwise, it would have made things very awkward. The sect seemed to have accepted a candidate for the top 10 disciples. Most people would watch their words with them. Although Han Ming's talent was top-notch and he was favored by the spirit of mountains and rivers, Jiang Hao didn't really care. As long as he wasn't a spy, that was good enough. Spies had a clear purpose and were hard to get rid of. Someone like Liu Xingchen. There would be some form of backlash in the end, he was sure of it. Jiang Hao needed to become stronger before that happened. But no matter how powerful any of them were, no one was as powerful as that woman. Senior brother Jiang, my name is Han Ming. I hope senior brother can guide me, Han Ming said politely. He was also very curious. I heard that senior brother is 19 years old? Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. I hope one day I can surpass senior brother, Han Ming said with a smile. I am sure you will, said Jiang Hao with a smile. Han Ming was a true disciple. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, felt lucky he was where he was. I will show you around. But you don't really need to tend to them all the time. I will take care of it. You better focus on your cultivation, he said kindly. As a true disciple, he didn't need to come here. It would be a waste of time. The cliff master most likely brought him here to get familiar with the surroundings. Thank you, senior brother. Han Ming smiled brightly. Jiang Hao showed him around the spirit herb garden and explained to him about the different spirit herbs. Senior brother, have you been helping to manage this place all this time? Alone? Doesn't it consume a lot of your time? Asked Han Ming. It's all right, said Jiang Hao slowly. I like managing the place. Han Ming didn't seem to agree. I feel that spending a lot of time here isn't very fruitful, especially for the cultivation level. I want to become one of the strongest people in the sect. I want to become one of the top 10 disciples. Jiang Hao smiled politely. Then I wish for you to achieve it as soon as possible. Senior brother, how long do you think it will take me to surpass you? Han Ming asked. Maybe a few years, said Jiang Hao. Under normal circumstances, it would take him a few years. Unless he had a fortuitous encounter, then he can advance rapidly. After that, Han Ming left as if to say that he had more potential than that. Jiang Hao only smiled and bid him goodbye. Other people didn't really care much for the spirit herb garden because they didn't receive many bubbles from here. But it was different for Jiang Hao, he could get a lot of bubbles from the spirit herb garden. Most people left the white bubbles because they thought it was worthless, but he knew better. If they accumulated enough, they could make a huge impact. After learning the method of concealment and control, he felt that he could feel the improvement every day. He probably thinks I'm in the early foundation establishment stage at just 19, so he wants to come and see for himself. There is no danger from him. In a few months, he will probably forget and won't care anyway, said Jiang Hao to himself. He went along with his routine and took care of the spirit herbs in the garden. At noon, he went to the market and set up his stall to sell some talismans. He then returned to his house and continued to make more talismans. He read the secret manual at night to learn and understand better. The next day, he found 2 bubbles at his residence. He then started his daily routine and visited the spirit herbs garden to continue collecting more bubbles. At noon, Jiang Hao sold some talismans again. He now had a total of 135 spirit stones. He wanted to use them to buy a spirit seed. But he hadn't decided which seed he would buy, yet. He could have gone yesterday since he had enough spirit stones, but he didn't because he had already used up his daily appraisal. He wanted to appraise the seed before he decided to buy it. He knew where he could buy the seeds. Snow Lotus Pavilion. It was the sect's largest spirit medicine store. It sold all kinds of spirit medicine, elixirs, spirit seeds, etc. A portion of the spirit herbs came from the Cliff of Broken Hearts. As Jiang Hao maintained the spirit herb garden there, He had once received a list of orders. Buying seeds. A fairy guide in pigtails asked politely, "What kind of spirit herbs do you want to grow, senior brother?" "I am not very sure. Sometimes it's very difficult to grow them," said Jiang Hao. "It's not the environment that is the problem, but the spirit herbs themselves." The fairy guide nodded. "What is your budget?" "About 100 spirit stones," Jiang Hao said. 100. Then you can buy a good seed. There's one that just happens to be suitable for senior brother. Please come in." The fairy guide led him to a room with many seeds with unique purposes. Buying a seed for 100 spirit stones wasn't very unusual. It was common for those in the foundation establishment stage. The fairy guide showed him a snow-white seed lying quietly in a glass box at the counter. "This is a snow lotus seed. A high-grade spirit herb that can heal injuries and increase cultivation. The best place to grow it is in the snow or somewhere cold, but it can still grow in other places. It's just that the speed of growth would be slower. The price is 99 spirit stones. Does this meet senior brother's requirements?" asked the fairy guide. Jiang Hao silently activated his daily appraisal ability. He was more confident if he could see the seed's potential for himself. Chapter 24. Chapter 24. Can I take a look? Jiang Hao asked the fairy guide. Of course, she said. Taking the seed in his hand, Jiang Hao examined it very carefully. He saw a tiny crack at the base. He pointed it out to the fairy guide. The fairy guide flashed him a strained smile. Senior brother definitely has a good eye for spirit herbs. Since there is a crack, we can give it to you for half a price. 50 spirit stones. How cunning, thought Jiang Hao. If he hadn't discovered the crack, she would have ripped him off his spirit stones so easily. But this was normal here. Especially in the devil sect. No one cared about honesty and integrity. "I'll take this one, thank you," said Jiang Hao. "Could you show me another seed of around 50 spirit stones?" "Of course, this way." Jiang Hao bought a blue lotus seed for the remaining price. It had no other function than to gather more spirit energy. It had only one disadvantage: if it wasn't well taken care of, it would wither easily. As for why it was so expensive, it probably was slaughtered. "I wonder if it can give off blue bubbles," thought Jiang Hao looking at the seed in his hands. White and green bubbles were easy to accumulate. The spirit herb garden had a lot of those. After returning to his house, Jiang Hao planted the snow lotus seed and surrounded it with 16 spirit stones. He only had 19 spirit stones left now. If he bought more talisman-making materials, he would be plain broke. He needed to earn more spirit stones. The next day, Jiang Hao awoke from his cultivation. The first thing he wanted to do was to check his garden. Other than the 2 blue bubbles given off by the... When Jiang Hao woke up from his cultivation, the first thing he did was to come to the courtyard. Other than the 2 blue bubbles provided by the heavenly fragrance Dao flower, there was nothing. The snow lotus seed obviously hadn't sprouted yet. It would take time for it to grow. He took out the blue lotus seed and appraised it. "That's all," muttered Jiang Hao. As expected, he was ripped off of his spirit stones for something so ordinary. He planted the seed anyway and left for the spirit herb garden. A month later, Jiang Hao put down his talisman pen and put away the 10,000 sword talisman he had just finished making. Senior sister Leng Tian had placed that order. There were a total of 10 talismans, and this was the last one. Including the cost of failure, it had cost him 80 spirit stones. After selling them, they should fetch about 200 spirit stones. The net profit was 120 spirit stones. He hadn't cultivated for the past few days. It was a great loss on his part. He shook his head and opened his interface. 90. I still need to wait for a week or so to advance. Jiang Hao looked at his age and sighed. "I'm already 20 years old," he muttered. The past 20 years had not been very smooth for him. He was alone, but fortunately, he was not in danger. Congratulations on living past 20 years old, Jiang Hao joked with himself before walking out of the house. When he arrived at the courtyard, he saw that there was finally a bubble at the snow lotus. It was purple in color. The blue lotus hadn't grown yet. Since he didn't have any hope for that spirit herb, he wasn't in a hurry to see results. When he walked, the bubbles around him started to fly to him. Divine ability fragment. Jiang Hao wished there was something else in the purple bubble. Divine abilities were great, no doubt about them. But they lacked attack skills. He didn't have powerful spells and treasures. Soon, he would have to participate in a sect mission. He had to figure out a way to get stronger. If it really doesn't work out, then I'll go buy one. After I give out the 10,000 sword talisman, I should have around 400 spirit stones, close to 500 spirit stones. I can buy a decent magic treasure with that, thought Jiang Hao. Having made his decision, Jiang Hao left his house and headed to the spirit herb garden to collect more bubbles. He would buy the magic treasure after he advanced. There was still time. When he reached the spirit herb garden, he saw Han Ming at the entrance. Senior brother. Han Ming walked over to him with a smile. Senior brother, do you see anything different about me? Has my aura become stronger? Jiang Hao was surprised. Han Ming was at the early foundation establishment stage, and it wouldn't take him long to advance to the middle stage. However, this was too quick. Out of curiosity, he appraised Han Ming once again. The inheritance of a mighty figure. Jiang Hao was shocked. Was it because he had the favor of the spirits of mountains and rivers? In a few months, I will advance to the middle stage of foundation establishment. At that time, I will surpass senior brother, said Han Ming, smiling brightly with a hint of arrogance. Jiang Hao smiled. Congratulations, junior brother. Han Ming smiled even more radiantly. When the time comes, can I challenge senior brother? In the sect, I am the only one around senior brother's age. Okay. Jiang Hao nodded his agreement. When the time came, he would just need to put on a good show and lose willingly. Han Ming just wanted to show off. Jiang Hao didn't mind letting him be in the limelight. Okay, it's a deal. Senior brother, please don't get angry if you lose. After all, there's a big gap between us. Han Ming was about to leave, but he paused, thinking of something. I heard the Cliff Master say that the sect's mission had been arranged. You are there too. Chapter 25. Chapter 25. The sect mission was out. Although Jiang Hao didn't show it, he was very concerned. So, after collecting the bubbles, he went to the foot of the mountain where the law enforcement hall was located. He stood in front of the announcement board and saw his name. Jiang Hao of the Cliff of Broken Hearts, clean up the Devil's Den. It's a team mission, thought Jiang Hao. Who are the others? He saw the names of 4 people. 2 were from the place he least wanted to see. Qing Shui of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Lu Feng of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Xin Yuyue from the Thunder Fire Peak. Zheng Shijiu from the Ice Moon Valley. 2 from Heavenly Joy Pavilion. I wonder what their cultivation levels are, wondered Jiang Hao. He hadn't had much contact with the Thunder Fire Peak and the Ice Moon Valley, so he probably wouldn't make enemies with them after all. But the 2 from Heavenly Joy Pavilion were bad news. He looked at the date when the mission would commence. It will be at the end of the next month. There was still a month and a half left. 45 days. I should advance to a higher level first, then consolidate my cultivation, then save up a month's worth of spirit stones to buy a powerful magic treasure. I'll use the remaining half a month to practice. And then, spells. I don't have anything suitable for the Hongmeng Heart Sutra, so I'll ask the Cliff Master, decided Jiang Hao. Although the Cliff Master didn't really think highly of him, he would still help him if he asked. The Heavenly Joy Pavilion would definitely cook up something in this trip to the Devil's Den. Master would understand his situation. The Devil's Den was a blessed land with many sect experts cultivating inside. It was said that the Devil's Den used to be the territory of the demon dwellers. Now, the demon dwellers were sealed in the deepest part of the cave. Even if they could escape, they would only be at the foundation establishment stage. The sect experts didn't care about these small flies, so they needed the inner sect disciples to enter the cave and clean them up. The cleaning time would roughly extend from 1 to 3 months. It depended on their progress. When they return after finishing, they would be rewarded according to the battle results. It was also a good place to train. If only Jiang Hao hadn't offended the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, he would be very excited to join the team because the training didn't only offer actual combat experience but also allowed him to find dropped bubbles. He left the announcement board and decided to find the team members and ask about their experience. He needed to make preparations. "Junior brother, we meet again," said a young girl in green. Senior sister Ming Yi greeted Jiang Hao politely. This was the substitute saintess of the Heavenly Saint sect. She was in the early stage of the Golden Core realm. She was also a spy. The level of danger was high with her. Fortunately, they had cleaned up the traitors last time, so these people were, hopefully, well behaved. Moreover, with the appearance of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower, they didn't dare to act rashly. They were even more worried. Everyone knew that the flower was there to fish them out. Apart from that woman, there was no one who dared to bite the hook. "Junior brother is really polite. I just saw your name. Are you going to the Devil's Den?" Fairy Ming Yi said with a smile. Senior sister Ming Yi looked sweet, and her smile was as warm as the sun. However, Jiang Hao knew that she was vicious and merciless, and there was a knife hidden in her smile. It was best not to offend her. The early stage of the Golden Core realm was like an insurmountable mountain pressing down on him. He was no match for her. "Yes." Jiang Hao nodded. There was no point hiding it anyway. "I'm going to the Devil's Den to carry out a mission at the end of next month." "This is for you, then," she said. "I just happened to get it, so take it as a thank you for Junior brother's help in the past. I will look for you if I have some difficulties. I hope you won't refuse to help me. Bye. Good luck with your mission." Senior sister Ming Yi placed a piece of paper on Jiang Hao's hand and left. Jiang Hao opened the letter. Perhaps having a friendly spy was worth it after all. The paper had the list of his team members' names along with their strengths. Heavenly Joy Pavilion's Qing Shui, late Foundation Establishment stage, close to a breakthrough. She mainly cultivates the Heavenly Joy Celestial Path. The more you see her cold and elegant outlook, the easier it is for you to fall into temptation. Heavenly Joy Pavilion's Lu Feng, middle Foundation Establishment stage, close to breakthrough. She mainly cultivates the Heavenly Joy Fallen Immortal Path. She can cause one's mind to fall into chaos. Thunder Fire Peaks Xin Yue, early Foundation Establishment stage. She mainly cultivates the Heavenly Fire Thunder Sword. She is best at summoning Heavenly Thunder to counter the Heavenly Joy Pavilion's Fallen Immortal Path. Ice Moon Valley's Zheng Shijiu, late Foundation Establishment stage. She mainly cultivates the 1,000-mile Ice Seal. She is decisive in killing and looks down on the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Jiang Hao felt strange looking at their information in the paper. The first two definitely would dislike him from the beginning. However, the last two seemed like they were especially chosen to retrain those from Heavenly Joy Pavilion. "Is someone helping me?" Jiang Hao immediately thought of the Cliff Master. Although he wasn't the most gifted, surely, he was worth a little to the Cliff of Broken Hearts. Jiang Hao felt that the Cliff Master had done this to help him. He had selected other two team members who could balance out the malice of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. The Pavilion Master's hatred of him was because he had killed his vessel for his cultivation. If he found a new body, Jiang Hao will be fortunately forgotten. But if he couldn't find someone soon, Jiang Hao would have to run for his life, because they would be after him forever. Even if he revealed his cultivation, his master might not be able to save him. It would be too dangerous for the mater to get involved. He would be spied on all the time, and if it got out of hand, the Devil sect might not be able to accommodate him any longer. However, he wasn't sure what would happen if he died. There was danger everywhere. "Hey, isn't this junior brother Jiang Hao from the Cliff of Broken Hearts?" said a voice. He raised his head and saw a man walking over to him. The man's hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. There was an indescribable viciousness in his eyes. He was in the middle Foundation Establishment stage. "Hello, senior brother. Do I know you?" Jiang Hao asked politely. "We'll go to the Devil's Den next month. We are on the same team. I hope junior brother is well prepared." Lu Feng patted Jiang Hao's shoulder. "With your body this delicate, you will die if you go in the den carelessly. Don't blame me for not saving you," he said mockingly. Lu Feng laughed menacingly and left. Jiang Hao lowered his eyes. He knew who he was. Lu Feng of Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Chapter 26. Chapter 26. Back at the Cliff of Broken Hearts, Jiang Hao began thinking about Heavenly Joy Pavilion. He had offended them by killing senior sister Yun Ruo, but he guessed that not everyone there wanted to kill him. If everyone hated him, then he would have been dead by now because the Heavenly Joy Pavilion would have intentionally or unintentionally tried to get rid of him. There were only two groups of people who actually hated him enough to kill him. 1. Those who wanted to impress their pavilion master, and 2. Those who were infatuated by senior sister Yun Ruo. Both groups were a danger to him. Going to the Devil's Den this time is bound to be highly dangerous for me. I need to advance to the late Foundation establishment stage soon so I can at least defend myself, thought Jiang Hao. In any case, I have a defensive magical treasure now. The only thing I need is an offensive magical treasure. The Hong Meng Heart Sutra could be used as a lone magic technique, but so far, Jiang Hao didn't know how to unlock it. His cultivation wasn't enough. After taking care of the spirit herb garden for a while, he went to find the Cliff Master, Ku Wu Chang. A technique. Cliff Master, Ku Wu Chang, got straight to the point. What kind of technique do you want to learn? Something powerful, said Jiang Hao. Do you use a knife or any other weapon for that matter? I can use knives and swords. He was hardly an expert, but he had used them before. Besides, specializing in a particular magical treasure wasn't an option at the moment. Okay then. I'll teach you the demonic sound slash. Ku Wu Chang pointed at the space between Jiang Hao's eyebrows as he spoke. The shadow of the blade appeared in Jiang Hao's mind. It was like thunder and lightning. The shadow then disappeared from between his brows. Ku Wu Chang gave him a book. Take this back and study it. Your talent is good. You should be able to learn it in a month or so. Thank you, Master. Jiang Hao took the book and left. When he was leaving, he saw Han Ming and other senior brothers arrive. You want to learn an attack method? Then I'll teach you the Heavenly Thunder Sword. Learn it well from me here. Only after you learn it can you leave. Ku Wu Chang's stern voice came from inside. He was talking to Han Ming and the others. Jiang Hao paid it no mind and left. The treatment of true disciples was different from others for sure. More attention and more effort were given to them. Jiang Hao didn't care. He had to learn the demonic sound slash first. Still, he couldn't help but sigh at how good of a treatment the true disciples received. After returning to his house, Jiang Hao looked at the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. I have to go to the White Moon Lake. When I leave for the mission, I won't be around to take care of the flower. It might not be good to just leave the flower unattended. He went to the cultivation room and activated the clear and pure heart ability. In an instant, his mind became sharp and focused. He could understand many things at one glance. He opened the book to read about the demonic sound slash. For 7 days in a row, Jiang Hao focused his effort and energy to learn it. On the 8th day, he understood it. He walked to the edge of a stream and picked up a branch. He swung it. Boom. The demonic sound rolled, revealing its sharpness. The shadow of the blade was 10 meters long and slashed everything down. Boom. The stream exploded, sand and stones flew in every direction. The sound of an explosion rang out. A long blade mark was left on the ground. Jiang Hao smiled. It's done. The technique is not bad. 7 days was enough to learn it properly. He was grateful for the clear and pure heart ability, otherwise it would have taken him more than a month to master the demonic sound slash technique. I still need a saber. I need to save up another month's worth of spirit stones to buy it, Jiang Hao sighed. He had not sold any talismans in these 7 days other than the 10,000 sword talisman senior sister Leng Tian had ordered. All his time was spent comprehending the demonic sound slash. He only had around 400 spirit stones in his savings. It was supposed to be a large sum, but Jiang Hao felt that it wasn't enough to save his life. To buy the best magic treasure of the Foundation establishment stage, a few hundred spirit stones definitely wouldn't be enough. Jiang Hao threw away the branch and returned to his courtyard. These few days, He had discovered something new. Every 3 days, a bubble would appear in the snow lotus. It was either lifeblood or cultivation. It could not be compared with the 2 bubbles that the heavenly fragrance Dao flower gave off in a day, but it was certainly better than before. As for the blue lotus, it had also bloomed. However, on the first day, it only gave off a green bubble followed by a white one. It was still better than nothing. Jiang Hao glanced at his interface. He was still short of lifeblood. He could start to level up tomorrow maybe. Jiang Hao headed to the spirit herb garden. He looked around and found a blue bubble. He walked over to it. Jiang Hao was happy feeling his strength rise. The most important thing for him now was for his lifeblood to reach 100. I can advance tonight. After he tended to the spirit herb garden, he headed out. He told some of the outer disciples to take care of the spirit herb garden in his absence. Around a month later, he would leave for the Devil's Den. He needed someone to take care of the spirit herb garden in his place. He made some time to go to the White Moon Lake. He didn't see Elder Baiji, but senior sister Ju Chan had a message for him. There were only 2 words, "Don't worry about it." It seemed the flower would lure out the traitors whether he was there to take care of it or not. He didn't need to worry. Jiang Hao returned to his house and looked around. There were no problems so far. He went inside and decided to extract the lifeblood and cultivation base. He wasn't sure if he could enter the late foundation establishment stage in one go. But he couldn't delay any longer. The majestic lifeblood and spiritual energy began to fill Jiang Hao's 8 meridians. The purple lifeblood mist guided them. It seemed much easier and more efficient than before. Chapter 27. Chapter 27. The lifeblood and spiritual energy poured in. Hong Meng's Heart Sutra operated in its own way. The spiritual energy passed through the gathering realm and poured down into the energy center. The spiritual energy in his energy center gathered and compressed as though it was attacking some barrier. Bang! Under the strong compression, the spiritual energy became purer and massive. Jiang Hao heaved a sigh of relief and continued its circulation. The remaining 20 points of lifeblood and cultivation were fully absorbed. He needed to strengthen his cultivation in case of an emergency. The next day, Jiang Hao opened his eyes and clenched his fists. The powerful force within his body made him happy and relieved. After being in the sect for many years, he knew that only strength could ensure his safety. Here, in the sect, without strength, you were nothing. You were at the mercy of others. He couldn't even refuse something without becoming strong. There was always danger. He was now in the late foundation establishment stage. Although that wasn't considered formidable, he was still a step closer to becoming stronger. The trip to the Devil's Den would now be a little less anxiety-ridden. However, it wasn't enough. He had very few advantages. Jiang Hao walked to the courtyard and collected bubbles. The bubbles were provided by the Blue Lotus. Jiang Hao made a fist and a huge rock shattered with a loud boom. This was the strength of the body made possible by the lifeblood and the power it provided. From the looks of it, even if I lose all my cultivation, I still have extraordinary battle strength, thought Jiang Hao. It had been a good idea to collect white bubbles day after day no matter how insignificant it had looked. After practicing the demonic sound slash for a while, Jiang Hao went to the spirit herb garden and continued with his daily routine. The next month, he spent most of his time at his house improving himself. Thankfully, no one came to disturb him. When he practiced the demonic sound slash, he read the secret manual along with it. He found out that it was easier to control his strength if he followed the guidelines. The secret manual given to him by that dangerous woman was really a treasure no matter how hard he tried not to admit it. At night, he made talismans. Spirit concentration talismans and divine sword talismans were the most common, so he made them a lot. He also made some 10,000 sword talismans, but he didn't sell them. They might come in handy in the Devil's Den. He had 15 of them. He kept them for himself and sold the rest. Now, he had a total of 723 spirit stones. In fact, he hadn't really earned much this month. Business wasn't really good these days and most of his spirit stones were spent buying materials to make the 10,000 sword talismans. Jiang Hao planned to buy some magic treasures after he finished tending to the spirit herb garden. There are only 7 days left before I go to the Devil's Den. I shouldn't delay buying them any longer. He had to get used to their magic even after buying them, otherwise he wouldn't be able to use them efficiently when the time came. There were only 7 days left to practice with them. However, there was one thing that he was hesitant about. He looked at his interface. Lifeblood and cultivation are almost half full. Should I wait or just use them to break through? Questioned Jiang Hao. After a moment of hesitation, he decided to keep them as it were. His cultivation had already been consolidated, so it wouldn't be of much help if he couldn't advance by extracting them. The probability of them attacking me directly when I enter the Devil's Den is very low. I'll have time to clear the demon dwellers and continue accumulating my cultivation. Jiang Hao, having made his decision, left for the sect market. He stood in front of the Stellar Tower and observed for a moment. He felt that this place was much grander than the Snow Lotus Pavilion. A saber-type foundation establishment artifact. The fairy guide, after hearing his request, led the way. "Senior brother, follow me." After a while, the fairy guide showed him 3 sabers. The first one was completely red, about 3 fingers wide and 3 feet long. The second one was glowing with light, about 2 fingers wide and 1 foot long. It was a short saber. The third one was pitch black, about 3 fingers wide and 2 feet long. The first is the Blazing Sun Knife. It contains a potent firepower, and its blade aura is of very high temperature. It has great destructive power. The price is 888 spirit stones, explained the fairy guide. The second is the 7-colored Moonslaying Blade. It leaves no traces. It has the ability to kill without being seen. The price is 1,100 spirit stones. The third is the Shadow Blade. It is invisible at night. It is not as powerful as the first 2, but because of the material, it is extremely strong. The price is 830 spirit stones. Jiang Hao picked up the Shadow Blade because that was the cheapest among the 3. What he wanted the most was the 7-colored Moonslaying Blade. But that was so expensive. In the end, he negotiated the Shadow Blade for 720 spirit stones. No matter how precious the other weapon was, he couldn't afford it. After purchasing his blade, he sold some talismans, barely earning 30 spirit stones. He then headed to the spirit herb garden for a little while and returned home. He wanted to get familiar with his new blade. In the dark night, he swung his blade, creating a huge wave. The blade slashed in all directions, displaying massive destructive power. Jiang Hao felt that the blade matched perfectly with the demonic sound/technique. However, the two weren't compatible. The Shadow Blade was suitable for assassinations and the demonic sound/ was too eye-catching. But combined, they did work powerfully. I can catch them off guard. Jiang Hao looked at the sky. It was getting lighter. Today was the day. Whether he came back from the Devil's Den or not was something he couldn't know for sure. Chapter 28. Chapter 28. After packing his things, he went out to the courtyard. He couldn't ask anyone else to take care of his house and his small garden because of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. He was worried something might go wrong. People coveted it. They might kill others or get killed in the process. The courtyard was always watched. He wondered if that woman would come here again. If she sees me gone, will she take the heavenly fragrance Dao flower with her? Jiang Hao stopped worrying. That woman was certainly someone of importance, and Elder Baiji must be on the move anyway. I'd better pray for myself first. He looked at his interface. More than half. I don't know if I can make it to 100 soon. If I can, I will still need a quiet environment to advance further. This was his last trump card. Jiang Hao went to meet his cliff master before leaving the Cliff of Broken Hearts. Unfortunately, his master wasn't there. He had wanted to say goodbye. He walked to the foot of the mountain where the law enforcement hall was located. "Junior brother, are you leaving?" Liu Xingchen walked towards him. "Good morning, senior brother," Jiang Hao said politely. Everything felt funny. All the spies were suddenly concerned about him. How was that possible? It appears they wanted him to come back alive, though he didn't know why they would care. Junior brother isn't in a good situation, Liu Xingchen said as he walked with Jiang Hao to the place where those going on missions would gather. I've seen the name list. The strongest person is in the late Foundation establishment stage. There's another late Foundation establishment stage cultivator who isn't on good terms with the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. That should be good for me at least, said Jiang Hao. Yeah. The people appointed by the Heavenly Joy Pavilion for this mission were in the middle and late Foundation establishment stage. However, something unexpected happened. Liu Xingchen sighed. They changed people? Jiang Hao asked in surprise. No, they didn't. Liu Xingchen shook his head. But they advanced. Jiang Hao was stunned. He felt he was in big trouble. He recalled the 4 words on the piece of paper that senior sister Ming Yi had given him, close to a breakthrough. At this moment, he remembered the 4 words on the note, close to a breakthrough. Both team members from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion had been close to a breakthrough. So, the one in the middle stage had advanced to the late Foundation establishment stage, while the one in the late stage had successfully completed the Foundation establishment stage and advanced further. This was dangerous. Thank you for your reminder, senior brother. Jiang Hao was grateful. Liu Xingchen nodded. He then left Jiang Hao. I need to find a way to gather enough lifeblood and cultivation to break through to another stage, thought Jiang Hao. When he arrived at the gathering place, he saw 4 people. One was a cold and serious-looking woman. The other was a man who looked fierce. Their eyes, as they watched Jiang Hao, were filled with savagery. Across from them stood a man holding a white paper fan who looked friendly and a woman in blue. She held a long sword and glared at the 2 in front of her. These were his teammates. Qing Shui and Lu Feng of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, Zheng Shijiu of the Ice Moon Valley, and Xin Yuyue of the Thunderfire Peak. Although those 4 people didn't like each other, he didn't know if he could be on good terms with any of them. When he approached, everyone looked at him. Some sized him up, others looked on teasingly. Jiang Hao tried not to get flustered and walked over to them. Greetings, senior brothers and sisters, he said politely. I apologize for being late. In fact, the 4 of them had come too early. No. You are right on time, smiled Lu Feng of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. It seemed that they had been waiting for this day for a long time. Then let's go, said Zheng Shijiu of the Ice Moon Valley. That's right. It's disgusting to stand around with people from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion for too long, said Thunderfire Peak's Xin Yue in disdain. Jiang Hao didn't say anything to that. He noticed that the 2 from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion had concealed their cultivation. Thanks to the secret manual, he was able to tell their cultivation level. He still chose to appraise Heavenly Joy Pavilion's Qing Shui just to be safe. Jiang Hao was speechless. This was insane. Jiang Hao sighed. It wouldn't be Devil's Sect without some dangerous people. They arrived at the Devil's Den by noon. It was located at the central lake of the Heavenly Note Sect. It was a world of its own and was vast. The entrance fell within the boundary of the Heavenly Note Sect, so it was considered the sect's territory. I heard that most of the people inside are early or middle Foundation establishment stage demon dwellers. If that's the case, we should split up and deal with them, said Qing Shui. Lu Feng nodded. I agree. I don't think so. Zheng Shijiu shook his head. There will be a lot of demons. I think we should stick together. That way we can not only attack efficiently but also look out for each other, if necessary. If we split up, it might prove to be difficult to fight late or peak Foundation establishment stage demons, should we encounter them. At least we will have a chance of defeating it together. Splitting up as soon as we enter will be no less than courting death. I agree with senior brother Zheng, Xin Yuyue of Thunderfire Peak echoed. I agree with senior brother Zheng, too, said Jiang Hao. He needed to stay with everyone. He was no match for someone at the peak of Foundation establishment stage if they chose to attack him. All right. After we clear most of the demons, it will be safer to split up later and deal with the lone demon dwellers, said Qing Shui. She stared icily at Zheng Shijiu. Jiang Hao could feel her displeasure. But now was not the time to dwell on it. He needed time and sticking with everyone would give him that. Chapter 29. Chapter 29. When they entered the devil's den, they had expected it to be a dark and gloomy cave. But they were surprised to see a bright sky inside the den. In the sky, light moved like water waves. It was vast and boundless. The ground was no different from how it was outside. There were mountains, rivers, lands, flowers, and trees. They walked at the edge of a forest. They could see a beam of light in front of them that rose to the sky. It seemed like stars were falling from the light. It was a marvelous sight. The core of the devil's den, thought Jiang Hao. He had done his reading of the records of the sect. The core was the place where the demon dwellers were sealed. No one was allowed near it. This is my first time coming to the devil's den. I didn't expect the environment to be so beautiful, Xin Yue of the Thunderfire Peak said in surprise. Yeah, the place is quite beautiful, but the danger is high as well, said Lu Feng, smirking at Jiang Hao. I heard that if you die here, even the law enforcement hall won't come to investigate. Jiang Hao lowered his eyes. Lu Feng was threatening him. Jiang Hao calmed himself. The more they provoked him, the calmer he had to be. Otherwise, this would escalate into a disaster. First, he had to find the demon dwellers and kill one of them. Planting spirit herbs and killing demonic beasts were similar. They both gave off bubbles. It's a little too calm. Zheng Shijiu looked around and frowned. It's indeed a little too quiet. Usually, demon dwellers would already attack by now, said Qing Shui. The five of them walked deeper into the forest. Jiang Hao looked around vigilantly. His perception should only be slightly weaker than Qing Shui of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. But he didn't dare to show it. Jiang Hao looked to the left. There was some movement there. Qing Shui warned, it's coming. Whoosh. Boom. The huge rock smashed, and a huge pit formed on the ground. They scrambled to take cover from the falling rocks. A flame surged towards the rock. Bang! Xin Yue had made her move. Her power was formidable. Jiang Hao noticed that she was about to advance to the middle foundation establishment stage. Roar! An angry roar came from the explosion. 3 burly figures rushed over. When they got close, Jiang Hao saw them clearly. They were like orangutans, and their bodies were covered with hair. Their faces were ferocious. Jiang Hao rushed forward. From his estimation, the creatures should only have the strength of someone in the early foundation establishment stage. He swung his blade and leaped in front of the first demon, slashing at it. The blade slashed past, and sparks appeared. But there was no damage. Jiang Hao was shocked. He gave up on the blade and jumped behind the demon. He pulled out his dagger and stabbed it in the neck. It was very difficult to push the dagger into its neck. But finally, when he succeeded, blood gushed out. Roar! The demon roared. Jiang Hao stabbed the dagger into the demon's neck again and pierced through it. The demon fell to the ground. TWP bubbled emerged from its body and fused into Jiang Hao. This was the first time he had killed a beast and gotten bubbles out of it. He looked at the other 2 demons. There were no more bubbles. Looks like junior brother loves stabbing at someone's neck, said Lu Feng with a smile, who had cut another demon in half. Senior brother, you're joking. The demon's body is harder than expected, but its neck is slightly weaker, Jiang Hao replied softly. There had been some information in the records, but this creature had skin harder than recorded. After carefully reviewing the battle, Jiang Hao realized that if he wanted to break through the demon dweller's defense, he could use the demonic sound slash. It would be dangerous if there were too many of them. There was another requirement. He needed to kill at least 50 demons before he could safely walk out of the devil's den, otherwise, these people from Heavenly Joy Pavilion would not let him walk out of here alive. So, the neck is their weakness. Xin Yue stabbed the demon's neck with her sword. It's easy to kill them if their neck is severed. We must be careful. The demon dwellers attacked us so suddenly. It means this place is their territory. There were 3 of them together. Maybe they attack in groups, said Zhang Shijiu. It just so happens that we can clear them out together. Once we finish them off in groups, we can find the lone ones, Qing Shui said coldly. She walked forwards. The others followed. Jiang Hao followed, too. He was thinking about how to kill more demons. Soon, they met the demon dwellers again. This time, there were 4 of them, and one of them was in the middle foundation establishment stage. Jiang Hao ignored that one and killed the other 3. He stabbed one with his dagger and went straight for the other 2. Everyone seemed willing to let him fight. Jiang Hao received 3 air bubbles. Looks like the harvest isn't too stable. The number of kills has to increase. Jiang Hao's heart sank. He wasn't as optimistic now. After that, he went all out to kill the demon dwellers. A month passed just like that. During this month, they all moved together. This also helped Jiang Hao be safe. The Heavenly Joy Pavilion wouldn't try to kill him in front of the others. Looking at the demon dwellers lying in front of him, Jiang Hao felt that things were getting worse. It had been a month, and he had met many demon dwellers every day. However, the number of bubbles became fewer and fewer. It was not only because there were fewer demon dwellers now, but also because Lu Feng would not let him kill so many. When Lu Feng saw that Jiang Hao was going all out to kill demons, he did the same too. He did not even hide his cultivation level anymore. Jiang Hao knew why Lu Feng was doing this. If there were very few demon dwellers, then there would be no choice but for them to split up. His lifeblood and cultivation were still short of 100. Chapter 30. Chapter 30. Raw. Another devil appeared. Jiang Hao rushed to make his move, but Lu Feng beat him to it. A slash and then boom. The devil was killed on the spot. Jiang Hao could only watch. Junior brother Jiang seems very keen on killing these demons. Me too. It's just that I want to find out who can kill more, said Lu Feng with a smile. His smile was full of malice. Jiang Hao had appraised Lu Feng on the second day they were at the Devil's Den. He wasn't here for Heavenly Joy Pavilion. He was here for senior sister Yun Ruo. He had been madly in love with her. And now he sought revenge for her death. Why is junior brother so silent? Lu Feng's eyes were filled with ferocity and bloodlust. His hatred is becoming stronger. At this rate, it would be very easy for him to lose control, worried Jiang Hao. He wasn't the only one worried. Zheng Shijiu was worried too. If Lu Feng lost his mind, he might kill everyone present. Lu Feng was at the late foundation establishment stage. Xin Yu was also wary. Even if she could try and restrain Lu Feng, it might not be enough because the difference in their strength was too great. It's been long since the demon dwellers have reduced in numbers. Let's split up and find them, said Qing Shui suddenly. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, including Jiang Hao. He was very worried. If Lu Feng made a move, Qing Shui would join him without doubt. His cultivation was about to be full. There shouldn't be any problem for him to advance. He just needed a little more time. Although splitting up was dangerous, Jiang Hao felt that it could give him time for a breakthrough. Zheng Shijiu knew about the animosity between Jiang Hao and the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Headed and T want to be dragged into it. The risk was too high. Does anyone have any objections? Qing Shui asked again. Junior brother Jiang, what do you think? Zheng Shijiu asked Jiang Hao. I think it's a good idea, said Jiang Hao calmly. Zheng Shijiu was impressed by his calm demeanor despite the threat Lu Feng posed to him. On the other hand, Lu Feng smiled like a predator that could finally have its fill. Then which direction does junior brother want to go? Zheng Shijiu let Jiang Hao choose first. Let's not go in the same direction. We can clear the den much faster that way. After agreeing on the final meeting place, Jiang Hao headed straight inside. The first choice had its pros and cons. It was a good thing that Zheng Shijiu was watching so no one could follow him in the same direction. But it also meant everyone knew which direction he went in. He had to walk fast. After making sure that no one could see him, he changed directions and sped away. After Jiang Hao left, Zheng Shijiu looked at the two from Heavenly Joy Pavilion. They didn't waste any time in choosing a direction. I heard that senior brother Zheng is dissatisfied with the people from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Why didn't you settle the matter? Xin Yue asked with a smile. Zheng Shijiu sighed. It's not that I don't want to, but I am no match for them. One of them is at the peak of the foundation establishment stage and the other is in the late stage. The Heavenly Joy Pavilion is really shameless, Shin Yuyue said disdainfully. The Heavenly Joy Pavilion is angry, but the Cliff of Broken Hearts isn't too weak either. But I think this time the Heavenly Joy Pavilion will be the winner. I heard junior brother Jiang relied on fortuitous encounter to advance and he is only an inner sect disciple, said Zhang Shijiu regretfully. True, said Shin Yuyue. All 5 of us won't be returning together, are we? I have a feeling it's only going to be 4 people who will be returning, said Zhang Shijiu. Junior brother Jiang might be staying here. So, there really is no escape for him, asked Shin Yuyue. I don't think so, said Zhang Shijiu sadly. Those 2 from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion seem very violent. I think they are already chasing Jiang Hao. He paused for a while. Junior sister, are you coming with me or going by yourself? Thank you for your consideration, senior brother. I want to train myself, Shin Yuyue refused politely with a smile. All right, said Zhang Shijiu, choosing a direction for himself. See you in a month. Shin Yuyue despised Heavenly Joy Pavilion. They weren't good people. Ice Moon Valley was hard to figure out. She didn't want to put herself in danger. As for Jiang Hao, she could do nothing about it. His cultivation was weak, and he had offended a strong enemy. Perhaps it was better for him to die early. It would save him a lot of pain in the future. Jiang Hao used his fastest speed to go all the way inside. When he encountered the demon dwellers, he did not make a move. He deliberately left them there so that he would not be easily discovered. The next day, he stopped by the lake. After traveling non-stop for a day, he felt that he had bought some time. He needed to kill a few demons to obtain enough cultivation and lifeblood. Then he could try and advance to the peak of the foundation establishment stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to fight against those from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Roar! A demon rushed out of the lake. It had the strength of the middle foundation establishment stage. Jiang Hao killed it in one slash. Then, he picked up the air bubble. Only one. He continued on his journey. Every time he saw the pillar of light with stars falling out of it, he was in awe. But he didn't dare go near it. The number of demons was increasing. It took him 3 days to gather enough air bubbles. After killing the last demon dweller, Jiang Hao heaved a sigh of relief. His lifeblood and cultivation were finally full. It's time to find a place to advance. Somewhere else, Lu Feng saw the demon dweller's corpse. He looked up from the lakeside with a dark gleam in his eyes. Found you. Chapter 31. Chapter 31. Finally found. Chapter 31. Finally found. He can really run. Lu Feng stopped at the lakeside and looked at the demon's corpse. It had been easy to find him these few days. He hadn't expected Jiang Hao to run this far and this fast. Fortunately, he was prepared and brought a treasure to look for him. As long as there was a trace, he could track him within a day. He took out the treasure compass and began to search around, looking for more traces. Lu Feng found something, and he headed in that direction. Behind him, Qing Shui followed. Jiang Hao had run so far that it surprised them. Jiang Hao had been keen on killing as many demon dwellers as possible. Lu Fen didn't know why, but he was determined to make Jiang Hao fail at all costs. Was it his goal to exhaust me, thought Lu Feng. After he followed the trail for a while, he realized Jiang Hao wasn't there anymore. He had run far away again. Gauging from the corpses of the demon dwellers, they had been dead for a day or two. Something's wrong. Lu Feng frowned. At this speed, he can completely hide from us. Why is he killing the demon dwellers? Does he want to draw people to him? Or is he after something from the demon dwellers? What could he want so badly from them that he risks being found out? Lu Feng felt the need to find Jiang Hao as soon as possible. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Since he had made a move, he needed to eliminate all future troubles. That night, Jiang Hao sat cross-legged in the giant tree. This was the only safe place he had found at the last minute. Mountain peaks were rare in the Devil's Den. And there were no caves. The best hiding place was inside the tree. He was trying hard to break through to the peak of the foundation establishment stage. If he couldn't do it even after accumulating 100 cultivation and lifeblood, the coming days would be fraught with dangers to his life. Those two of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion were far from stupid. They would find him within a day or two. If they found him, Jiang Hao would be fighting against a late stage and another at the peak of foundation establishment stage. Chances of his escape to safety weren't high. He hoped he could make that breakthrough. He felt that the chance of him breaking through was high. He had 100 cultivation and lifeblood which he hadn't used yet. The purple mist guided his lifeblood and spiritual energy, trying to break through the barrier to the peak. Jiang Hao calmed himself and let everything fall into his energy center. The cultivation and lifeblood in the interface constantly changed. The number had dropped from 100 to 27. If he couldn't break through till the number reached 0, then it would be impossible for him to reach the peak today. He suddenly heard movement outside. He ignored it. He had to focus all his energy to advance before he was discovered. Outside, Lu Feng was walking in the forest. He had used all his strength and speed to reach here. But he didn't discover much. Did I take the wrong direction? He suspected. He used all sorts of tracking methods and techniques. All pointed to this place. The direction was right. But where was the person he was looking for? He kept moving forward, always keeping an eye on his surroundings. Qing Shui followed behind to avoid getting ambushed by surprise. They had noticed Jiang Hao's speed. It was almost abnormal. They were on their guards. Where would someone hide in a forest? Muttered Qing Shui. Bushes. Trees. Trees. Lu Feng began to observe the surrounding trees more carefully. He senses a tree radiating spiritual energy. It looked like an ordinary tree, but there was something different about it. Lu Feng was overjoyed. But he had his doubts. It seemed that whoever was hiding was trying to make a breakthrough. Lu Feng had to interrupt him no matter what. He swung his broadsword. Clang. Dodge if you can, cried Lu Feng madly and swung at the tree with his broadsword. The large tree was split in two. He saw Jiang Hao. Lu Feng aimed straight for the space between Jiang Hao's eyebrows. He wanted to split Jiang Hao in two. However, when the blade was about to hit Jiang Hao, a phantom armor stopped the attack. Clang. The blade and the armor collided, evenly matched. A protective treasure? Lu Feng was shocked. Lu Feng wanted to try again and use all his strength to break through the armor. Jiang Hao, who had been sitting there with his eyes closed, suddenly opened them and looked at Lu Feng. Their eyes met as golden light shone. A powerful aura erupted from Jiang Hao's body. He had reached the peak of the foundation establishment stage. How is that possible? Thought a shocked Lu Feng. He turned pale. Jiang Hao didn't give him any time to contemplate. He extended his hand and his shadow blade appeared in it. He slashed using the demonic sound slash technique. Even though Lu Feng was already on defense, the slash sent him flying backwards. Bang! He directly crashed into a large tree. His blade was broken. His palm was sleek with blood. But he was still alive. Jiang Hao didn't mind. He was happy that he had managed to injure his opponent to buy himself some more time. He got up and looked at Qing Shui. It wasn't good for the two of them to fight together. They had to end the battle as soon as possible. Qing Shui thought the same. She charged at Jiang Hao with her long sword in hand. Her cold and elegant sura surged. Jiang Hao was able to ignore it, thanks to the Jiu poison. Otherwise, it would have distracted him. He brandished his shadow blade and charged. Clang. Their blades collided. The light of her long sword and the darkness from the shadow blade radiated in every direction. In the dark night, the two of them launched their attacks. Neither wanted to retreat. Boom. A powerful force forced them to separate. Qing Shui shouted at Lu Feng, "Hurry, let's attack together, he just leveled up. So, he can't hold it for long." Qing Shui realized that she could not take down Jiang Hao alone. She, too, had just leveled up, so her powers were still a little unstable. If they didn't band together, both of them would end up dead. Chapter 32. Chapter 32. Kill the enemy. Chapter 32. Kill the enemy. Lu Feng looked at Jiang Hao in disbelief. But he didn't have time to think too much about it. He had to listen to Qing Shui if he wanted to kill him. He spat out a mouthful of his blood essence. The drops of blood that fell from his body were scorching hot and it rushed towards Jiang Hao. Meanwhile, Qing Shui wasted no time and charged at Jiang Hao with her sword again. Jiang Hao tried to dodge the propelling drops of sizzling blood while trying to defend himself against Qing Shui's attacks. The blood dripped down like raindrops. The sword's intent was too cold and powerful. Boom! The blood exploded on the ground, creating a big pit. Bang! The sword slashed across, and the trees were shattered. In the darkness, the long sword and the shadow blade met and lit up the air. It was a battle of life and death. Jiang Hao tried to hold out as much as possible. But he felt like he would be defeated soon. He ignored the blood and turned to Qing Shui. He used the demonic sound slash and swung at her. Qing Shui used her strongest technique to defend herself. Boom! The two swords clashed, and the power swept through the surroundings, making a huge halo. The two were in a heated battle. Lu Feng launched a blood attack again and realized that most of it was blocked by Jiang Hao's magic treasure. He didn't hesitate. He spat a mouthful of his blood on his broadsword to imbue it with more destructive power. He then approached Jiang Hao at an impossible speed to attack. Jiang Hao was defending against Qing Shui's attack while Lu Feng ambushed him from the other side. Jiang Hao calmed himself. He looked at Lu Feng and directed a little of the purple lifeblood mist towards him. The broadsword responded. Jiang Hao turned his head to avoid Lu Feng's attack. Then, he raised his hand and lightly knocked the broadsword with the back of his finger. The purple lifeblood had already spread to the tips of his fingers. Crack! The broadsword broke in the middle. As the broadsword fell from his hand, Lu Feng realized he was in danger. He saw a purple energy striking his chest with force. The force was too powerful. It hit his chest and shattered his ribs, crushing his internal organs. Lu Feng spat out fresh blood and fell heavily on the ground. Jiang Hao turned to Qing Shui. He had circulated the Hong Meng Heart Sutra to the extreme, and purple energy covered his entire body. Even the shadow blade was encased in it. He moved his blade, and a powerful force erupted from it. With a boom, Qing Shui was forced back. However, before his opponent could land on the ground, Jiang Hao brandished the shadow blade, now covered in purple energy. He used the demonic sound slash along with the purple energy. The shadow of the blade whistled past and penetrated Qing Shui's body. She fell to the ground. She looked at Jiang Hao in disbelief. How is he so strong? Her long sword lay broken. Cracks appeared on her body, draining her life force. Lu Feng was terrified watching all this unfold before his eyes. He struggled to get up and run. But only a few steps away, a knife pierced through his neck and nailed him to the tree. Jiang Hao had thrown the shadow blade at him. "If we die here, everyone will know it was you who killed us," said Qing Shui. Her eyes were full of hatred. "Maybe," said Jiang Hao. "But I remember you saying no one investigates deaths in the Devil's Den." Jiang Hao took out 10 of the 10,000 sword talismans he had packed with him. Each of them had the power of the Foundation establishment stage. He divided the talismans into 2 groups, 7 in one and 3 in other. Then, he attacked Qing Shui and Lu Feng. The 10,000 swords multiplied by even more and charged at the 2 people. Their corpses were completely shredded. Those 2 from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion were dead. Jiang Hao spat out a mouthful of blood after the fight ended. He had forced the breakthrough and now his body was injured and strained. When he had forced the Hong Meng Sutra to activate, it had added to his injuries. If he wasn't severely injured, he wouldn't have used his talismans. But he was glad the crisis was over, and he was still alive. He sat cross-legged on the ground and tried to heal his injuries. But a few demon dwellers approached. They must have been alerted by the sound of the recent fight. Here were 5 of them. Jiang Hao sighed. He was really in trouble. A month later, near the Devil's Den, Zheng Shijiu of the Ice Moon Valley waited for the others to arrive. He held a paper fan in his hand and looked into the distance, lost in his thoughts. "Senior brother, You are early, said Xin Yue of the Thunderfire Peak as she sheathed her sword and walked to the entrance where they had all decided to gather. There were a lot of useful things in the Devil's Den, if you knew where to look. She had encountered some of those things. It had been a thrilling experience. She had already earned enough for this sect mission, excluding the reward. Zheng Shijiu smiled. Seems like junior sister had encountered a lot of opportunities. I didn't have much luck. I only found some small, unremarkable things. Senior brother, you're just being modest. I didn't encounter many demon dwellers along the way. In fact, I didn't even see one when I was walking here. That should count as a successful mission, right? Zheng Shijiu nodded. Yeah, I didn't encounter too many as well. Xin Yue also looked into the distance. Senior brother, do you think junior brother Jiang will come back? I don't think so. Zheng Shijiu shook his head sadly. I found their tracks. Lu Feng and Qing Shui were moving together. Those three must have met at one point. Junior brother Jiang's survival seems unlikely, especially facing a late stage and another at the peak of the Foundation establishment stage. Xin Yue sighed. I guess it couldn't be helped. We don't really know what's going on either. But what if junior brother Jiang does return? Impossible. Zheng Shijiu shook his head. But let's say he does. What would happen then? Asked Xin Yue. Then that will not be good, said Zheng Shijiu in a low voice. Chapter 33. Chapter 33. The Formidable Junior Brother Jiang. Chapter 33. The Formidable Junior Brother Jiang. Why would that be bad? Asked Xin Yue with furrowed brows. Because, said Zheng Shijiu, looking into the distance. If three of them did meet, there must have been an intense fight. It isn't strange for those two from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion to return. They are more powerful than junior brother. But, if he does return to us here, what do you think would have happened? That those from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion might have failed, said Xin Yue. It's not as simple as that. If, under any circumstance, junior brother Jiang returns, it would mean that he killed the other two, said Zheng Shijiu. That's impossible. How could someone in the early Foundation establishment stage kill another of late and peak stage? Xin Yue felt that it sounded close to impossible. That's right. If it happens, wouldn't that be a disaster? It would mean junior brother Jiang has some special ability to even subdue someone in the late and peak stage. Someone more powerful than him. Do you think he would let us off if he thought we posed a threat? Said Zheng Shijiu. You are in your early stage, and I am in the late stage. If he killed those two, it wouldn't be difficult for him to get rid of us either. As he finished his words, Xin Yue looked to the side, terrified. She nudged Zheng Shijiu. Senior brother, look, she said nervously. Zheng Shijiu turned his head to look where she indicated. He did not understand why she was so scared. But as he turned, he saw a young man walking out of the forest. His footsteps were steady and he looked calm. Zheng Shijiu's pupils were constricted. His heart pounded as though something bad was going to happen any minute. Senior brother, what should we do? Xin Yue asked in a low voice. If they hadn't discussed the possibility of Jiang Hao being able to kill people stronger than him, she wouldn't have been worried about it. But now, she felt like she would be attacked any minute. The young man walking towards them was Jiang Hao, completely healed from his injuries. Don't be nervous. Keep a distance from him. We can't stay in the Devil's Den. The faster we leave, the safer it will be. Don't get too close to him. As long as we can run, it will be okay, said Zheng Shijiu. Jiang Hao reached them. Zheng Shijiu smiled at him as he moved away a little. Junior brother Jiang, did you get anything this time? The demon dwellers are mostly cleared, Jiang Hao replied. He found the two of them a little different from before. They seemed to be on their guard against something. He slowly understood the reason for their reaction. He had returned but the other two had not. It obviously looked suspicious since they knew those two had been targeting Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao did not care. He had no intention of picking a fight with them as long as they didn't attack him. Besides, there was no evidence of the fight with those from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Nobody knew what had happened anyway. As for killing these two to silence them, It seemed like a bad idea. It would cause too many suspicions unnecessarily. Are the senior brother and sister of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion still not back? Jiang Hao asked. They must have been delayed by something, said Xin Yuyue. Then we don't have to wait. Let's go, Zheng Shijiu said with a smile. Under normal circumstances, he would have urged to stay back for a day or two to wait for them. But he couldn't care about them now. The longer they stayed here, the more dangerous it would be. Yeah. They aren't children. They will return on their own after completing the mission, Xin Yue added. Jiang Hao nodded in agreement. He had been in the Devil's Den for more than 2 months now. He was worried about the state of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. The three of them walked out of the Devil's Den. Zheng Shijiu and Xin Yue heaved a sigh of relief when they were finally outside. Outside the Devil's Den, it wasn't allowed to kill fellow disciples. Their deaths would be investigated. However, they didn't relax completely. It was so strange that the one they needed to be careful of the most was the young man they had looked down on. After bidding farewell to the two of them, Jiang Hao handed in his mission. In the future, people would visit the Devil's Den to make sure how many demon dwellers were cleared. Once they were certain, rewards would be handed out. As for the discovery of the dead bodies, Jiang Hao did not care. They would soon be food for the remaining demons. If the law enforcement hall didn't investigate the Devil's Den, no one had the evidence to condemn him. But he wasn't sure what Liu Xingchen would do. He hoped he wouldn't go and investigate by himself. Jiang Hao had already cleared the scene. Technically, there was nothing left to be found. After leaving the mountain where the law enforcement hall was located, Jiang Hao decided to visit the Cliff Master before he returned to his house. His master was a little surprised to find him safe and sound. But he nodded in good faith and didn't probe further. Jiang Hao finally walked home. It had been 2 months since he had been here. The moment he saw his small garden, he noticed that there were 2 blue bubbles on the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. The snow lotus didn't have any bubbles yet. It looked a little wilted. The blue lotus was on the verge of withering away. Jiang Hao watered the plants. Looks like no one visited. Maybe the traitors are actually scared to even show themselves. He checked his surroundings and heaved a sigh of relief. He rested for a while. He then took out his shadow blade to check. The blade was already filled with cracks. Although it had been useful in killing Qing Shui, the blade had reached its limit. The reward this time can't compare to this magic treasure. Jiang Hao shook his head and placed the sword in a corner. It was just for decoration now. He opened his interface and checked his current state. It has only been about 9 months since I built my foundation, and I have already completed it. This is the first time I feel that the Golden Core realm is right in front of me. Chapter 34. Chapter 34, The Demoness Again. Chapter 34, The Demoness Again. After killing the 2 people from the Heaven's Joy Pavilion, Jiang Hao consolidated his cultivation. He also used all of his remaining cultivation and lifeblood. If he had to fight them now, he could do it very easily. In the last month that he spent in the Devil's Den, it had been very difficult to meet any demon dwellers. His cultivation and lifeblood hadn't received much replenishment. The biggest gain from this mission was that he had completed his foundation establishment stage. It would provide him with some stability for a short while. As long as he stayed here and continued with his routine, he would become stronger. His confidence was because of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. He looked at the flower and its 2 tender leaves. Jiang Hao sighed. The flower gave him opportunities, but it also brought his dangers. He didn't know when it would be over. Jiang Hao stared at the flower and evaluated his shortcomings. The armor had helped him immensely. Because of it, he wasn't lacking in defense. But he still didn't have any magical spells and treasure that could be used for offense. The power of the demonic sound slash wasn't bad, but a better master might not necessarily be willing to teach him more about it. The inner sect was after all an inner sect. He needed to think of a way to get a better one. Magic treasures. It was better to use a knife. It was quite convenient. He wanted to buy a new one, but for that he needed to reach the Golden Core realm. It would cost almost 1,000 spirit stones. He didn't have that much. He was still poor. He needed to make more talismans and earn more. 7 days after returning from the Devil's Den, Liu Xingchen sent him the reward for the mission completion. It was a total of 300 spirit stones. Liu Xingchen also told him that the 2 people from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion hadn't returned, so he needed to ask some questions. Just formalities, junior brother. If you know anything, please tell me the truth so that I can provide an explanation to the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, said Liu Xingchen. Of course, senior brother. Ask away, said Jiang Hao, maintaining a neutral expression. Junior brother, tell me about your experience in the Devil's Den, said Liu Xingchen, walking to the courtyard of Jiang Hao's house. In the beginning, we progressed together for safety. But after a month or so, the number of demon dwellers greatly decreased, so we all decided to part ways, take different directions and work separately. So, hunting the demon dwellers was the only thing I had time for, said Jiang Hao. Liu Xingchen turned to look at Jiang Hao. Have you seen the 2 from the Heaven's Joy Pavilion? Jiang Hao shook his head. Actually, I deliberately avoided them. So, I didn't meet them except when we started from here. Liu Xingchen nodded and smiled. Then that's all I needed to ask. The Heavenly Joy Pavilion is suspicious of you, but without evidence, they won't take the risk. During this period, junior brother can cultivate peacefully at the Cliff of Broken Hearts. Goodbye. Liu Xingchen left. As Jiang Hao watched him leave, he used his ability to appraise him once again. Liu Xingchen, a true disciple of the Heavenly Faction. Born with the aura of a dragon and a cultivation base at the peak of the Golden Core realm. Nothing better to do than to spy on the Heavenly Note sect's law enforcement hall. The reason he is on good terms with you is because he wants to get close to the Heavenly Fragrance Dao flower to watch it carefully. He seriously suspects that you killed the 3 people from the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, and he has developed a strong interest in you. Jiang Hao was speechless. Although coming under the radar of Liu Xingchen made him distressed, he wasn't a threat for now. Liu Xingchen must have been telling the truth when he said I could cultivate peacefully. Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, he could accumulate his cultivation and become stronger without threats from others. It had been a month since Jiang Hao had returned from the Devil's Den. Han Ming came looking for him. Senior brother, we meet again. Han Ming smiled at Jiang Hao. Junior brother, what brings you here? Asked Jiang Hao, puzzled. Han Ming's cultivation base surprised him. It was indeed drastically useful to have an inheritance in the middle foundation establishment stage. Han Ming had advanced so quickly. Senior brother, have you forgotten? I wanted to spar with you. I'm already prepared. Han Ming looked eager. Do you want to spar in private or in public? Jiang Hao just remembered. In private would be better. Nobody would be there to see him, so it wouldn't matter how he lost. What about the time? Han Ming asked. Tomorrow, Jiang Hao said after thinking for a while. Today, he would sell his talismans and figure out a way to lose so it looked the least suspicious. He also needed to buy a better set of materials to make talismans. He had already learnt to make 12 types of talismans. Out of the 9 talismans, 3 were just supplementary and not very useful. For example, cleaning talismans, strength talismans, and pain-relieving talismans were not really sought after. Cleaning talismans used spiritual energy to keep the clothes clean. Not many liked to use strength talismans. Pain-relieving talismans had only minor healing effects. He didn't make much of those. Okay, I'll look for senior brother tomorrow morning. How about we do it by the stream? Han Ming asked. Jiang Hao nodded his agreement. Han Ming left thinking that after tomorrow, he wouldn't need the senior brother anymore. Jiang Hao watched him leave, indifferent to the somewhat insolent attitude by his junior. He was just relieved that Han Ming would leave him alone after tomorrow. That would be good for everyone concerned. Do you really want to lose to him? A sweet and cold voice suddenly sounded behind Jiang Hao. He turned to see the woman in red standing in the courtyard. She was looking at the heavenly fragrance Dao flower with her brows lowered. Even her side profile was beautiful. Jiang Hao walked to the courtyard and bowed. Greetings, senior. Although he despised her visits, she was the only person who made him feel like a normal human. Gu poison was quite harmful. But it helped him many times. It had saved him from Yunruo's enchantments and also from those two of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. It had kept his mind unaffected. You seem to be afraid of being in the limelight. Hong Yuye turned around and looked straight at Jiang Hao. Chapter 35. Chapter 35, 7 Forms of Heavenly Blade. Chapter 35, 7 Forms of Heavenly Blade. Jiang Hao was worried about being in the limelight. In the Devil's sect, he wasn't valued much. If he was strong, it would be fine, but he was still weak. He just wanted to cultivate peacefully without unwanted attention from others. The outcome of the sparring match with Han Ming was of no consequence to him. But he couldn't tell her all this. So, he said, planting a flower as important as the one here, I don't dare attract unnecessary attention. Hong Yuye chuckled. What's your cultivation level? Middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, Jiang Hao replied. Hong Yuye walked to a corner and looked at him. I thought you were an honest man, but it seems I was mistaken. A good man can never lie so calmly. Jiang Hao lowered his head and didn't say anything. He didn't know if she was deliberately provoking him. When facing someone as monstrously strong as her, silence was the best method. Hong Yuye turned to look at Jiang Hao. I'll give you another chance. Tell me what your cultivation level is. Middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, said Jiang Hao again. Whoosh. Hong Yuye frowned. An invisible force whistled like a gale, striking Jiang Hao. He crashed onto the wall, unable to withstand it. He was really curious about this woman's cultivation level. Hong Yuye snorted derisively. Fine. I will take that answer for now. Jiang Hao exhaled. He wondered whether she could see through his concealment. You use a saber. Hong Yuye picked up the shadow blade. I do intend to. Jiang Hao nodded. He did want to focus on sword techniques in the future. I've met quite a few people. They all practice with the swords instead. Hong Yuye calmly looked at Jiang Hao. You don't practice with a sword? No. Jiang Hao shook his head. Why? Hong Yuye asked. I'm a disciple of the Devil sect. Practicing with the sword makes people think of disciples of the immortal school. That's why it's good to place the Dharma treasure on the saber instead, Jiang Hao replied. When he talked about the immortal sect, he usually thought about the fluttering white clothes and the long swords. There were all kinds of strange Dharma treasures in the demonic sect. Hong Yuye sneered and walked into the room. She sat at a table. You are not very much valued in the Heavenly Note sect, are you? Jiang Hao followed her in. He lowered his head and did not say anything. It was true. He wasn't really valued. He was just passable. As for the Heavenly Joy Pavilion, one day, when he surpassed them, he would definitely make a trip there. Hong Yuye continued, there are neither powerful magic treasures nor powerful spells that are of any consequence. There are still very powerful magic treasures, Jiang Hao retorted. He was referring to one of the 9 heavenly battle armors on his body. Although this item was only a foundation establishment magic treasure, it was part of a set. If all parts were gathered, it would be quite powerful. Jerry. Hong Yuye stared at Jiang Hao for some time. I have a saber technique here. Do you want it? What conditions do you have, senior? Jiang Hao asked curiously. It was impossible for her to give it to him for free. Aren't you going to spar with someone tomorrow? If you win, I will give you the technique, she said and looked at him with a smirk. Jiang Hao didn't respond instantly. He was thinking of what he would gain from the offer and what else he would lose. What will happen to Han Ming if I win? He would definitely pester Jiang Hao. It would raise suspicion. But it wasn't impossible to explain. Devil's Den provided many opportunities. He was there for 2 months. So, it wasn't strange for him to become stronger at that time. But would the Cliff Master believe him? There was a certain risk. Should I refuse and give up on the saber technique? He recalled the secret manual she had given him. It had helped him a lot. The things that this woman had given him had always come in handy. He made up his mind. He would win the sparring match and obtain the saber technique. Then, he would push all the blame to the Devil's Den for the increase in his strength. All right. Jiang Hao agreed. He didn't know when he would be able to obtain a good saber technique. He couldn't learn any of the techniques in Hong Meng's Heart Sutra. He could not pick up anything above purple bubbles unless he obtained another heavenly fragrance Dao flower seed. That was impossible. He could only seize the opportunity that he was presented with. You are quite decisive. Hong Yuye was bored and threw the book on the table. She then walked out of the house like a gust of wind. If I see that the heavenly fragrance Dao flower has not grown in any way the next time I come, I will hold you responsible. She disappeared without a trace after that. Jiang Hao bowed respectfully. After she was gone, he picked up the book. This time there was a title on the cover of the book. He wasn't in a hurry to read it. He glanced at the courtyard and saw that the corner where he had placed his shadow blade was empty. The woman stole my saber. Jiang Hao found it unbelievable that she could do such a thing. Shaking his head, he opened the 7 forms of Heavenly Blade. However, the book was so difficult to understand. The difficulty is much higher than the demonic sound slash. I know the name of the first form. The first form of the Heavenly Blade, Moonslaying. Breathing a sigh of relief, Jiang Hao planned to use his clear and pure heart ability tonight to read the book. But first, he needed to go to the Spirit Herb Harden and sell some talismans. Han Ming returned to his house eager for tomorrow to come. He was around the same age as Jiang Hao and he really wanted to beat him. After all, he was a true disciple and Jiang Hao was just an inner sect disciple. As long as he could beat him, Han Ming could call him junior brother and nobody would care. There weren't so many rules in the devil sect. If the disciples didn't kill other disciples and indulge in unnecessary fighting, there wasn't a problem. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. 1/ was enough to defeat him. Chapter 36. 1/ was enough to defeat him. Junior brother, said a tall and handsome man. Did something happen? You certainly look very happy. Senior brother Mu, Han Ming said with a smile. It's not that big of a deal. I am just looking for senior brother Jiang. He agreed to spar with me. Oh, Mu Chi said with some interest. Junior brother Jiang. He has a quiet personality and only knows how to manage the Spirit Herb Garden. Does he know you have advanced to the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment stage? I think he does, said Han Ming. I didn't really hide my cultivation. So, he might have noticed. Then junior brother, you have to be careful. Mu Chi kindly warned him. He just recently came back from the Devil's Den. There are many fortuitous encounters in the Devil Den. He must have found some. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sparred with you. It's always better to be careful. Senior brother Mu Chi left after that. Han Ming frowned. There was no chance to win by a fortuitous encounter. But caution was necessary. As fellow brothers, their age and cultivation were almost the same. Looking down on someone might be a very bad idea. Han Ming decided to be careful but still believed that he could win easily. The next day, Jiang Hao absorbed the bubbles and waited at the door of his house. He was waiting for Han Ming. Yesterday, he went to sell his talismans. But unfortunately, he couldn't sell much. The profit was less than 100 spirit stones. He had a feeling that he will sell even fewer today. He decided not to go to the market so frequently. In about 3 or 5 days, if he went once, it would be enough. When he finished selling the talismans, he had bought a passable saber for 100 spirit stones. It was a silver-white long saber. He planned to use it to cultivate the first form of the Heavenly Blade. The previous night, he had used his ability, Clear and Pure Heart, to understand the first form. The progress wasn't very significant, and he needed more time to comprehend it. He wasn't in a hurry. The demonic sound slash had taken time to learn, so he guessed that a style as complicated as moonslaying would take even more time. He needed to be patient. Senior brother, said Han Ming, walking towards Jiang Hao. He held a spirit sword in his hand. He looked extraordinary. Junior brother is really early, said Jiang Hao. Han Ming really seemed very eager and full of energy. I don't dare to make my senior brother wait for too long. Han Ming smiled. Where do you want to spar? Here would be fine, said Jiang Hao. Here. Han Ming looked at Jiang Hao's house at the back. Aren't you worried about damaging your house? Jiang Hao shook his head. Well, it's fine with me, said Han Ming, holding his sword at the ready. Then I'm sorry for offending you, senior brother. Zap. Han Ming's long sword was covered in lightning. Right from the start, he used his strongest move, Heavenly Thunder Sword. He had listened to senior brother Mu Chi's warning yesterday. He had decided to use his strongest move no matter how weak or strong his opponent was. Jiang Hao looked at his opponent. His expression didn't change. He brandished his saber and used the demonic sound slash. Rumble. Han Ming swung his word. Heavenly Thunder Sword resisted the demonic sound slash for a while. But the shadow pierced through the Heavenly Thunder Sword in the next moment. There was an explosion and the Heavenly Thunder Sword shattered into pieces. The shadow surged towards Han Ming. He used his spirit sword to block it. But the force was so high that Han Ming was sent flying backwards. He used his sword to help him stand. His long sword was full of cracks that it pricked at his heart. Han Ming realized that the difference between them was too vast. It was like heaven and earth. Junior brother Han, thank you for letting me win, Jiang Hao said politely and withdrew his saber. He had intended to put on a show of barely winning the match. But he was worried that it would send the wrong message. Those who were slightly stronger than him would approach him with ideas in their heads, and those who were much stronger than him would want to get rid of him easily. Therefore, he decided to defeat Han Ming in one hit. Chapter 37. Chapter 37. The Man in the Golden Core Realm of the Sunset Sect. Chapter 37. The Man in the Golden Core Realm of the Sunset Sect. Jiang Hao walked in the spirit herb garden, absorbing the bubbles around him. His strength and spirit were increasing bit by bit. He wanted his days to be this peaceful. But that was wishful thinking. A month later, he felt an unfriendly gaze on him as he tended to the spirit herb garden. Someone was staring at him. It was very faint, but he could sense it. He turned to see a few disciples in their lifeblood refinement realm collecting some spirit herbs. They looked unfamiliar. Who are they? Wondered Jiang Hao. He called over some outer sect disciples who worked in the spirit herb garden to ask them about it. Senior brother, they are from other main sects who are here to help out, said Cheng Cho. Is that so? Jiang Hao looked at the 5 people again. Which bloodlines are they from? The 5 people did indeed seem to be in their lifeblood refinement realm. But maybe it just seemed like that. That nameless secret manual had taught him many things. Since Jiang Hao now knew how to successfully conceal his cultivation, he knew how to detect other people's cultivation level as well. Among those 5, one of them had just advanced to the early stage of the Golden Core realm. However, that one concealed his cultivation level to make it seem as though he was like at lifeblood realm. Jiang Hao quietly activated his daily appraisal ability on the muscular man with a full beard. The result of the appraisal chilled Jiang Hao to his spine. He didn't really care about the man's infatuation with senior sister Yun Ruo, but the last line worried him. Came here to seek revenge even at the cost of his own life. In other words, he didn't mind killing himself if it meant taking Jiang Hao with him. No matter how strict the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Note sect, all security would be useless if he had to face him on the sect grounds. He wasn't afraid of death. Jiang Hao didn't understand. What was so good about Yun Ruo? Was she worth risking his life for? People in the Golden Core realm had long lifespans because not everyone wanted to offend them. They also had a high status. So why would they seek their own death? Everyone in the Devil sect lives an ignoble life, thought Jiang Hao. But a disciple of an immortal sect was different. He has a bright future ahead of him. Why throw everything away for an infatuation? Is there really no one as beautiful as senior sister Yun Ruo? Everyone seems obsessed with her. Jiang Hao sighed inwardly. I think some of them are from Thunderfire Peak, said Cheng Cho. There is a list outside, senior brother. Do you want to have a look? Jiang Hao nodded. He got up and left the spirit herb garden. He didn't dare to stay inside longer than necessary. He was worried that the man at the Golden Core realm would attack him suddenly. Someone at the peak of the Foundation establishment stage couldn't possibly withstand even a few blows from someone in their Golden Core realm. He didn't want to take a risk. His cultivation and lifeblood were about to be fully accumulated. If everything went well, he would be able to attempt to advance in a few days. However, since the man had already seen him and probably knew his name, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find Jiang Hao's house. It was likely that he might attack soon. Since he hasn't taken any action yet, he probably wants to leave this place alive, Jiang Hao thought to himself. But if the man found him and killed him in the dead of night, he would have enough time to leave the Heavenly Note sect undetected and return to Sunset sect. The Heavenly Note sect would have no way to deal with him then. After getting the name list, Jiang Hao left the Cliff of Broken Hearts and headed to the Law Enforcement Hall. He was there to look for Liu Xingchen. Although they were all spies, not everyone was looking to kill him outright. He knew Liu Xingchen didn't want him dead, so he wanted to ask for his help. Junior brother, is something the matter? Liu Xingchen was a little surprised to see him. Jiang Hao was famous for not leaving the Cliff of Broken Hearts unless he badly needed to. He had ventured out even less after he offended the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Everybody also thought him weak. His function was to guard the Spirit Herb Garden. He didn't dare leave the sect. Killing within the sect was based on merit. Killing outside the sect was based on one's mood. He didn't want to die on somebody's whim. There's something I want to tell senior brother. Jiang Hao took out the name list and handed it to Liu Xingchen. I think one of these 5 people might be a traitor. Junior brother, are you sure? Liu Xingchen took the name list and looked at it. I'm not really sure, but... Where did junior brother see them? Asked Liu Xingchen. The Spirit Herb Garden of the Cliff of Broken Hearts, Jiang Hao answered truthfully. Liu Xingchen thought for a moment. I'll check it. Junior brother, you'd better be careful. Jiang Hao nodded and thanked him. Liu Xingchen would definitely be able to find out about the traitor. Jiang Hao returned to his house and began to read about the moonslaying saber technique. It had been a month, and he had almost mastered the move. It was just that he wasn't skilled enough to use it efficiently. In the middle of the night, he took out his saber and waved it. The blade's light lit up like the moon, leaving a deep trench in the ground. If I use a little bit of force, it is even stronger than the demonic sound slash. If I use all my strength, I wonder how destructive it would be, thought Jiang Hao. Looking at the saber in his hand, Jiang Hao suddenly had the thought of using this technique on that Golden Core realm assassin who had come to kill him. He brushed the thought away. It was too dangerous. My strength is dazzling. Jiang Hao was shocked. During this period, he had advanced too quickly and obtained such a saber technique. He almost swelled up with pride. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. The man in the Golden Core realm was right in front of him. Chapter 38. The man in the Golden Core realm was right in front of him. After discovering Jinju, Jiang Hao didn't go to the Spirit Herb Garden anymore. He stayed at his courtyard and gathered bubbles there instead, waiting for his cultivation and lifeblood to reach 100. Liu Xingchen also didn't arrive to update him on the situation. Jiang Hao didn't know if he had found anything. This worried him even more. The early stage of the Golden Core realm wasn't something that someone in the Foundation establishment stage could compete with. He was worried that the man might not be able to restrain his hatred and would attack suddenly. As for hiding somewhere else, he had thought about that, but there were too many spies who hated him and wanted him dead, so his house was the safest for him at the moment. If the man chose to attack, Jiang Hao would leave straight for his Cliff Master's place for help. There was some hope that the master might help him. And the only thing he could depend on completely was his advancement to the next stage. Just a few more days will be enough. 7 days passed in a flash. He consolidated his cultivation and lifeblood every day so that he could advance. This time, though, it was different. He didn't know if 100 cultivation and 100 lifebloods was enough for him to advance. It was a big step into the golden core realm. If they were not enough, then everything would go to waste. He could only collect another 100 in 3 months. But Jinju Hung had already discovered him. Would he wait another 3 months to attack? It was unlikely. Perhaps he had already scouted Jiang Hao's surroundings and was waiting to attack in a few days' time. Jiang Hao looked at the interface. Lifeblood, 99-100, can be cultivated. Cultivation, 100-100, can be cultivated. 1 more day will be enough. Jiang Hao took his saber and raised it. He felt someone staring at him again. It was so direct that Jiang Hao balked. He wasn't prepared. He waited for the man to make his move, then he would try to escape. He didn't want to provoke him. The heavenly fragrance Dao flower crossed his mind. There were still too many people who coveted it. Maybe Elder Baiji or that woman would make a move if someone tried to steal it. Jiang Hao waited, but the gaze suddenly withdrew. He was puzzled. "Junior brother Jiang, are you there?" said Liu Xingchen's voice from outside. "Yes," Jiang Hao immediately replied. No wonder the traitor had retreated. But it was still daylight right now. The man might make a move at night. Jiang Hao invited Liu Xingchen in and poured him a cup of tea. Junior brother is right. It is indeed possible that he is a spy from another sect. He should be arrested by tonight. Liu Xingchen took a sip of the tea. Be careful. The person is most likely after you. Since he dared to enter the sect, he plans on not returning alive. However, everyone wants to live, so he might now back off easily. But if we make a move, he will become even more aggressive. Jiang Hao nodded to show that he understood. He didn't request for the law enforcement hall to protect him, nor did he ask Liu Xingchen to arrest him quickly. Jiang Hao already had so many people who disliked him. He didn't want more enemies. Liu Xingchen had already done a lot by informing him personally about the matter. Jiang Hao became curious as he looked at the empty courtyard. What if Liu Xingchen betrayed him? Should he look for Elder Baiji instead? Or should he tell the woman in red? Jiang Hao shook his head, unable to think of a solution. He didn't want to encounter the person. He walked out of the courtyard intending to visit the spirit herb garden. He was still lacking lifeblood. If the spirit herb garden had some bubbles, maybe he can try to advance right now. If he could advance fast, he might be able to face the danger that lurked around him. At the least, he would have a chance of escape. Jiang Hao noticed that Han Ming was getting people to organize the spirit herbs. "Senior brother Jiang, I haven't seen you for a few days," Han Ming said in respect. He was unwilling to lose to Jiang Hao, but he understood that he wasn't a match for him, at least not yet. "Junior brother Han is going on a long trip." Jiang Hao pointed at the spirit herbs. Usually, Han Ming did not prepare so much spirit herbs in an instant. Even if he was refining pills, he didn't need so many. So, the possibility was that he was going on a long trip. Azure Mountain is holding a DAO conference, and everyone seems to be reluctant to leave since they have a conflicting relationship with our sect, said Han Ming. "I want to go out to train." A confrontation between the righteous and the devil? Jiang Hao didn't want to experience something like that. Then junior brother must be very careful, Jiang Hao kindly warned him. He also saw a blue air bubble in the garden. But he didn't know if they contained lifeblood. "Will do, senior brother," said Han Ming. "When I come back after training, I will look for you to spar with." Jiang Hao nodded. Next time, he would lose to him deliberately so that he can be left alone. After bidding farewell to Han Ming, he went to the spirit herb garden. He looked at the people who had come to help. None of them looked as formidable as Jinju. After a while, the bubbles began to pour in. He was happy to feel the slight changes in his body. He had lost a lot of progress in these past few days because of the traitor. Soon, the blue bubble also merged into his body. It's done. Jiang Hao left the spirit herb garden. He wanted to advance to the golden core realm as fast as possible. Chapter 39. Chapter 39. Facing the Man in the Golden Core Realm. Chapter 39. Facing the Man in the Golden Core Realm. At night, in the Thunderfire Peak, a spell lit up the forest. Boom. The man in the Golden Core Realm merged into the darkness and left reluctantly. After coming to the Heavenly Note sect, he had finally found that person and even knew his strength. Tonight was perfect to make a move, but he was discovered by the people of the Law Enforcement Hall. He was going to be arrested. If it wasn't for the spy who notified him, he would be gravely injured. If he was caught, the Heavenly Note sect would definitely throw him in the Lawless Tower and suck out all his cultivation. He didn't care about dying. He only had one fear, that he would not be able to finish what he came here for. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have hesitated. I should have attacked the first time I saw him, thought Jinju Hung regretfully. He had stalled for time in vain. He had made every preparation. In fact, at a glance, he was only an outer disciple in the lifeblood refinement stage. The possibility of him being targeted had been zero. So, how did they discover me? 11 Zen. Boom. The spells kept on bombarding him. He did not try to escape. Instead, he went to find Jiang Hao. He would kill him first and think about escaping later. Late at night, Jiang Hao sat on the floor with his eyebrows furrowed. He grimaced. The purple energy kept churning and his strength surged in his meridians. The powers gathered in his energy center as though squeezing into one another. When the powers merged, it would create a change. However, even after a while, the powers were unable to merge into one. This was the bottleneck. Jiang Hao was not anxious about this. Instead, he circulated the Hongmeng Heart Sutra and sorted out the powers in an orderly manner, allowing them to merge quickly. In the dead and silent night, Jiang Hao's entire body was surrounded by purple energy. When the spiritual energy and lifeblood were completely exhausted, a cracking sound came from within his body. It was the sound of the bottleneck breaking. A tiny golden core gathered in his energy center and began to absorb all the surrounding energy. After a short while, a complete golden core floated in his energy center. A powerful aura overflowed and spread throughout his entire body. Jiang Hao slowly opened his eyes. He clenched his fist, feeling the new power that was emerging. He heaved a sigh of relief. The Golden Core Realm. It's unbelievable. Jiang Hao was surprised. In the past, it had taken a long time to accumulate cultivation bases. After encountering Yun Ruo, he was in constant danger even now after her death. But his advancement was becoming easier and faster. Maybe I should be thankful to her for putting me on this path, thought Jiang Hao. He shook his head. The source of all this wasn't senior sister Yun Ruo. It was that woman in red. Her appearance must have caused some changes in the Heavenly Note sect. They began to search for spies and traitors very diligently. It was then that senior sister Yun Ruo had targeted him. Most likely, it was then that the heavenly fragrance Dao flower was handed over to him to fish out more traitors. So, he had to thank that woman instead. But it was also because of that woman that Jiang Hao was in danger all the time. He should be blaming her instead. He shook his head and put his thoughts aside. He then went to the courtyard and raised his saber. Whether something would happen to him tonight or not was something he had to find out by waiting patiently. He sat there for the whole night. The first ray of sunlight emerged from the horizon. When Jiang Hao was sure that nothing was going to happen, he saw a figure approach. He's here. Jiang Hao picked up his saber and walked out of the courtyard. He walked to the stream. The person was now across from him. Both looked at each other. Under the rising sun, Jiang Hao could see him clearly. The man was muscular. His aura was weak. His clothes were torn. Fresh blood flowed out of the cuts and bruises on his arm and his waist as though he had just arrived from a terrible fight. Judging from his aura, he could be considered quite powerful. Was he intentionally letting him go? Jiang Hao immediately thought of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. Many people wanted to see what would happen if they touched it. That was why Liu Xingchen hung around him. He wanted a good show. You can't escape. Jinju Hung stared at Jiang Hao in malice. I'm not running, Jiang Hao replied. Are you waiting for someone to save you? Don't even think about it. The person who captured me is currently trapped by my supernatural power. He won't be able to make it here before daybreak. Jinju Heng's face only showed resentment. Why did you kill junior sister Yun Ruo? She was a traitor, Jiang Hao replied calmly. Do you know how important junior sister Yun Ruo was to me? She was my hope to survive. When I was weak, she was the only one who stayed by me. She was like a ray of light that lit up my dark world. She gave me a goal and motivation. She allowed me to surpass everyone around me. But, you killed her. Jinju Heng became even more agitated as she spoke. His eyes were filled with intense hatred for Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao looked at him and said, I know now. Jinju Heng scowled. Then you also know I have come to kill you. Jiang Hao remained indifferent. Do you still remember how good senior sister Yun Ruo was to you? I can never forget. Not in this lifetime, at least, Jinju Heng said angrily. Remember it for a while more, Jiang Hao said kindly. Recall that beautiful memory and then come kill me. Chapter 40. Chapter 40. The quickest way to earn spirit stones. Chapter 40. The quickest way to earn spirit stones. Jinju Heng stared at Jiang Hao, not saying a word. Instead, he sank into his memory. It was impossible for him to leave this place alive. Perhaps he wouldn't have the chance to remember junior sister Yun Ruo anymore. The image of her accompanying and encouraging him flashed through his mind. Senior brother Jin, if you defeat this demonic beast, I'll cook for you. How can no one like senior brother Jin? I like senior brother Jin very much. Senior brother, do you think my sect's clothing is good? He couldn't help but smile at the memories he had of her. However, a saber glowing with light flashed at that time. Whoosh! The saber glowing like the moonlight cut everything. His life force drained and everything returned to silence. Even Yun Ru's image faded. He saw Jiang Hao was slowly putting away his blade. He couldn't say anything for a moment because his life force was rapidly draining. Jiang Hao put away his saber and looked at the man in front of him calmly. Jinju Heng's vision began to blur, and he fell backwards. With a thud, he fell on the ground. His thoughts faded. That was it. Jiang Hao heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't know if Yun Ruo had been kind to him or if she had only used her magical charm, but it didn't matter anymore. Truth and falsehood didn't matter. Jiang Hao wasn't a heartless person, but he also wanted to live. He did not put his saber down. He used a few of the 10,000 sword talisman to make sure the man was really dead. He stood there for a long time. Advancing to the Golden Core realm had felt unreal. In less than a year, he had gone from early foundation establishment stage to early stage of the Golden Core realm. It felt so dreamlike. Jiang Hao calmed himself and went to find the Cliff Master. This time, he had used the strength of the middle foundation establishment stage. The knife technique was the first form of the heavenly blade, moonslaying. If it hadn't been a sneak attack, it would have been difficult to deal with. After a while, Cliff Master Ku Wu Chang arrived. He looked at the dead man and was silent for a long time. He looked at the saber and then at Jiang Hao. You killed him? Asked the Cliff Master. Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. You are in the middle foundation establishment stage? Ku Wu Chang asked. The cultivation Jiang Hao had revealed was that of the middle stage of foundation establishment. Yes. It was a fortuitous encounter in the Devil's Den. What about the saber technique? Ku Wu Chang asked again. A nameless saber technique I obtained in the Devil's Den, Jiang Hao answered. If his master wanted to see proof, he could probably write it down somewhere and give it to him. However, Jiang Hao realized that he shouldn't use fortuitous encounters as an excuse any longer. The master might start having doubts. Fortunately, his master did not ask any more questions. He only asked him to tell him in detail about the incident. Jiang Hao told him everything truthfully, except the matter of his cultivation level. You were not confident, so you still chose to launch a sneak attack? Ku Wu Chang stared at Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao nodded yes. Master Ku Wu Chang took away the corpse with him and told Jiang Hao to be more careful. He also said that the people from Law Enforcement Hall might come looking for him again. Seeing his master leave, Jiang Hao sighed in relief. He felt a little regretful. If the master could accept him as a true disciple, he would be so much safer. The people of Heavenly Joy Pavilion would think 100 times before bullying him. But he could only rely on himself. He returned to the courtyard and looked at the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. Jiang Hao frowned. There were no bubbles. He had thought that it would give him bubbles once the sun came out. It was daylight now and still there were no bubbles. What is going on? He was curious now. Does Master know I planted the heavenly fragrance Dao flower in my courtyard? He gave up thinking about it. There was no other way to find out unless he asked his master directly. The next day, Jiang Hao looked at the heavenly fragrance Dao flower in his courtyard, but he still didn't see any bubbles. On the third day, a bubble appeared. So, it only bubbles every 3 days now? Another 3 days passed, and the bubbles appeared. That proved the fact that it would give bubbles only once every 3 days. Even the snow lotus took longer to give him bubbles these days. Only green and white bubbles appeared on the third day. It wasn't until the 9th day that there were a few blue bubbles. Jiang Hao was stunned. 1 month after advancing to the Golden Core realm, Jiang Hao looked at his cultivation and lifeblood that had already exceeded 10 points and began to extract and cultivate. He wanted to see if the current 10 points were any different from the previous 10 points. After extracting his cultivation, a huge amount of spiritual energy surged into his body, much denser and more majestic than the previous 10 points. Not daring to think too much about it, Jiang Hao began to consolidate his cultivation. He circulated the Hong Meng Heart Sutra and absorbed the spiritual energy and lifeblood. After a long while, Jiang Hao slowly opened his eyes. He had completely consolidated his cultivation. He also understood that the decrease in air bubbles was related to his realm. The speed had suddenly become slower. If he had accumulated it 4 times, he would be able to attempt an advancement to the next level. The speed had decreased, but the amount of accumulation had increased drastically. With knives hanging over his head, he felt it was dangerous for him to not advance as soon as possible. He walked to the courtyard and looked at the heavenly fragrance Dao flower and thought that it would be great if it could grow 3 stalks. If not, he could always buy other spirit herbs to replace it. But he was short of spirit stones. He had earned about 500 from selling talismans. Including the previous ones, he had earned a total of 1,000 spirit stones. 1,000 spirit stones sounded a lot until he went to look at the Golden Core realm magical treasures. Even a small and simple saber costs 8,000. He would have to earn around 10,000 to 20,000 spirit stones if he wanted to buy anything. How long would that take me? Wondered Jiang Hao. How do the others in the Golden Core realm manage it? When he went to the spirit herb garden, he asked Chen Chou if he knew how. Rob someone, was the only thing he had said. Oh, senior brother, we need your help, said Chen Chou. He pointed in a direction in the spirit field. There seems to be a spirit beast running loose around the field. We can't catch it. Chapter 41. Chapter 41. Chapter 41. There's a possibility of purple gold bubble. A spirit beast. Jiang Hao was surprised. This month had been unusually peaceful for him. Liu Xingchen hadn't come to find him, and his master hadn't asked him anything. Jinju Heng's death didn't seem to cause any commotion. It was unusual. However, unless the law enforcement hall arrived here themselves, there was nothing he could do. He could only work hard to improve his cultivation and then get stronger. The spirit beasts were within his scope of things, though. Jiang Hao made his way to the field and looked around. The beast hadn't destroyed anything so far. It meant that the danger wasn't very high. However, those disciples still in the lifeblood refinement realm were weaker and the spirit beast might prove to be far stronger for them. Something rustled nearby. Jiang Hao slowly approached. The spirit herbs began to shake. The spirit beast had sensed his presence. A white figure leaped and attacked. Jiang Hao dodged. The spirit beast disappeared toward the spirit herb garden. It's not very big but is extremely fast, muttered Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao had a rough understanding of the situation. Those in the early Foundation establishment realm might not be able to keep up with the speed of the beast, let alone those in the lifeblood refinement realm. The spirit herbs rustled, and the beast attacked again. Jiang Hao blocked it with his saber. Clang! The powerful force forced Jiang Hao a few steps back. The spirit beast went flying backward. It isn't weak, either. Is the spirit beast at the early Foundation establishment stage? Whose beast is this? The Heavenly Note sect did not have a place to raise spirit beasts. However, most spirit beasts had owners. If it suddenly appeared in the Cliff of Broken Hearts, it was most likely owned by a disciple or a master. Jiang Hao couldn't brutalize or kill the beast for fear of offending them. Rustle! Jiang Hao waved his saber. He used the demonic sound slash. Boom! The demonic sound rumbled out like a wave. The spirit herbs stopped rustling. The others looked at the commotion. They were alarmed. If there was a fight, they would have to run for their lives, as they didn't have the ability to participate. It's all right. You all can continue with your work. Jiang Hao walked toward the spirit beast. The others heaved a sigh of relief and continued with what they were doing. However, they secretly observed Jiang Hao out of the corner of their eyes. They were all curious. Jiang Hao pushed aside the spirit herbs and found a white spirit beast foaming at the mouth. It had fainted. It had long, floppy ears. At first glance, it looked like a huge rabbit. Jiang Hao grabbed its ear and lifted it up. It didn't really look similar to a rabbit at close inspection. It almost looked like a human. The beast was quite adorable. I wonder who it belongs to. Out of curiosity, he activated the daily appraisal ability. He wanted to find out who it belonged to so he could return it. The beast would hinder others if it remained at the spirit herb garden. Jiang Hao was speechless. He had thought that this spirit beast belonged to a senior. He hadn't expected it to be a spy sent by Azure Mountain. Azure Mountain was the orthodox sect closest to the Heavenly Note sect. They were both powerful but did not interfere with each other's business. They had lived in peace this way for many years. However, there had been some kind of conflict with them recently. Han Ming had gone out to train there. It was surprising that Azure Mountain had sent a spy to find the Heavenly Fragrance Dao Flower. The Clear Sky sect, Heavenly Saint sect, and Sunset Immortal sect did not dare to act rashly. Even if Azure Mountain sent its entire force, it would be useless. Jiang Hao looked at the beast. The treasure it held was not so simple. He didn't know how to take it out of the beast without hurting it. The most important thing right now was to deal with the spirit beast. He should have just killed it, but Jiang Hao hesitated. It had a rare bloodline, too. However, taking it back with him would be dangerous. He wondered if he could raise it like he was raising the Heavenly Fragrance Dao Flower. Perhaps he could do it in secret. It might yield a purple gold bubble in 7 days. If I take it back with me, I will be monitored. Jiang Hao decided to buy a magic collar that could trap a spirit beast and raise it in the forest behind his house, at least for 7 days. Jiang Hao left the spirit herb garden. He had trapped the spirit beast in his attic. It was inconvenient to take it along with him to the market. Nobody came to his house that much, so the beast would be fine. Jiang Hao felt a little sad and frustrated. He knew that spies were everywhere. However, he realized that they would be constantly targeting him from now on. Everyone coveted the Heavenly Fragrance Dao Flower. He was in a daze. He had unknowingly gotten involved in something major that affected the sect. He still had no reliable ability to protect himself. If only he had refused to plant and raise the flower, he would not have been in this mess. Unfortunately, he had no choice in the matter. He went to the market and bought a magic collar to restrain the spirit beast. He also bought some talisman-making materials. It cost him a total of 600 spirit stones. It was unbelievable. In the past, he couldn't even think of spending so much. Chapter 42. Chapter 42. Chapter 42. The Demoness visits often. Jiang Hao looked at the beast collar in his hands. Raising pets was indeed expensive. A collar for a beast at the Lifeblood Refinement realm costs around 100 spirit stones. For a beast at early Foundation Establishment realm, it had cost him 500 spirit stones. When a pet spirit beast broke through to a higher stage of cultivation, it was important to replace the collar. Otherwise, the beast might easily break. Th realm cost more than 1,000 spirit stones. The more Jiang Hao thought about it, the more surprised he was at the amount of spirit stones his fellow disciples had. Fortunately, the talisman-making materials were reasonably priced. He had bought 6 fine-grade talisman-making materials. They were suitable for those in the Foundation Establishment realm and Golden Core realm. It had cost him 100 spirit stones. It had cost him lower than the pill formulas, anyway. Among the armament masters, alchemists, and talisman craftsmen, talisman craftsmen seemed to be the cheaper yet more lucrative option. After spending 600 spirit stones, Jiang Hao wanted to earn some spirit stones to compensate for spending so much. So, he thought of putting up a stall to sell talismans. However, when he thought about the spirit beast at his house, he gave up on the idea. Right now, the spirit beast was more important. Talismans could be sold any day, but he had to deal with the beast immediately. 100 Flowers Lake. Hong Yuye sat in the pavilion with a black saber on the table. It was Jiang Hao's shadow blade. She picked up the saber and looked at it for a long time. Then, she flung it, and it impaled on the flowers beside the pavilion. Go on. Tell me, she said. Baiji stood respectfully with her head lowered. She nodded. She found it difficult to breathe in such a powerful presence. After Azure Mountain's DAO conference, they suddenly decided to attack us. I think it's because of the reappearance of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. Looks like we have traitors in our midst, said Hong Yuye calmly. I apologize for my incompetence, said Baiji as he knelt in apology. Hong Yuye didn't look at Baiji. He looked up at the clouds in the sky. It's still early to tell. We must wait and watch. As for Azure Mountain, that's your problem. You handle it. I understand. Baiji nodded. There have been no changes in the Cliff of Broken Hearts. However, Jiang Hao's cultivation level has increased again. He may have some people who support him in secret. Devil Den might just be an excuse. He is still unable to clear his name completely. The undercover from the Sunset Immortal sect did die at his hands once again. A man at an early stage of the Golden Core realm. Then continue to observe him. Hong Yuye looked at the flowers. Since we are in a conflict with Azure Mountain, let's get our hands on some of their cultivation techniques and books. Baiji nodded. The breeze blew over the flowers and Hong Yuye looked at them, entranced. Baiji lowered her head and remained quiet. Hong Yuye broke the silence. Baiji, why do you think Azure Mountain dared to attack us so suddenly? Is it because the Heavenly Note sect is not as strong as it used to be, or is it because the Azure Mountain is growing stronger by the day? Neither, said Baiji. She looked terrified. In the past few decades, Azure Mountain has become stronger. However, in terms of strength, they are still inferior to the Heavenly Note sect. As the acting sect master, it was Baiji's responsibility to ensure the sect remained strong while monitoring the growth of other sects too. If other sects got stronger, then Baiji should ensure that her sect became even more powerful. Failing to do that would be slacking off at her job. Baiji was terrified the sect master would think she had shirked her responsibilities. If it is because of the heavenly fragrance Dao flower, there must be someone in the Azure Mountain who covets it for something important, said Baiji. Otherwise, with where the Azure Mountain is at this point, they wouldn't dare to act so rashly. Hong Yuye's gaze focused on Baiji. Find out. Understood. Baiji then left the pavilion. On the way back, she thought about her next move. She wanted to put a female disciple up to test Jiang Hao. However, she had a feeling that the sect master didn't really think Jiang Hao was a traitor. The sect master might have other plans, but I am not sure if Jiang Hao is entirely innocent, muttered Baiji. She was the one who had submitted the list. We need to delay the matter of the traitor for a while for now. I need to investigate Azure Mountain to find out who the mastermind is. In the afternoon, Jiang Hao hid the spirit beast. He went to the spirit herb garden and told the people there to inform whoever came looking for the spirit beast to find him so that they could get it back. Jiang Hao wondered if he could lure out another spy in this way. As for the spirit beast, he needed to wait for 7 days to decide what to do with it. He had taken the spirit beast to the forest behind his house. He put the collar around its neck. By this time, the spirit beast had woken up and struggled to break free from the collar. It seemed to dislike the collar vehemently. Jiang Hao looked at its helpless struggle for a while. He finally threw a spirit stone at it. The beast sniffed the stone and then ate it. Now, I only need to set up a range. That was another function of the collar. It could be used to mark a certain area beyond which the spirit beast couldn't venture. The money for the collar was indeed worth it. Jiang Hao wasn't good at making trap formations to keep the spirit beast from escaping. The collar did the job for him. Just as he was about to mark the area, someone spoke from behind. The voice was calm but didn't hold any emotion. He knew that voice. "What are you doing?" Jiang Hao turned around. She was there again, dressed in red. It was her. Chapter 43. Chapter 43. Chapter 43. She's really a Demoness. "Greetings, Senior," said Jiang Hao. "I found this spiritual beast today. I am planning to raise it." Hong Yuye glanced at the beast on the ground. "Why do you want to raise it here instead of your house?" "I am worried it might damage your flower." A strong wind blew suddenly and rustled the leaves on the tree. Before Jiang Hao could react, a force hit him on his chest and sent him flying. He crashed onto a tree. Hong Yuye grabbed the spirit beast. "You're so full of lies. Your cultivation level has increased very quickly." Jiang Hao didn't say anything. He wasn't injured. However, he knew that if he crossed this woman, he could not win. He wasn't sure if she could see through his cultivation. He didn't dare ask her about it. He raised his head to see the woman lifting the spirit beast by its neck. Her slender fingers seemed to squeeze its skin. "Senior, I." She looked at him indifferently. "You can't kill it." "Chem." Sure. I'll kill it." Jiang Hao sighed inwardly. There went his chance to earn a purple gold bubble. Hong Yuye squeezed the spirit beast's neck. It struggled. A pearl and a map fell into Hong Yuye's hands. She wiped them clean and put them away. She then threw the beast toward Jiang Hao. "Just keep it in your courtyard." She headed toward his house. Jiang Hao was surprised. How had he not seen her in the forest? He didn't know what she wanted this time. Did she want to check on the heavenly fragrance Dao flower? It was broad daylight. He suspected that someone might have followed her here. He looked around but didn't find anything amiss. He then looked at the spirit beast in his arms. The treasure was taken out. Does that mean I can keep it safely in my courtyard without getting monitored? He couldn't use the daily appraisal today. He decided to check once tomorrow to be sure. The woman's observation skills were extraordinary. He couldn't make her suspicious right now. Jiang Hao heaved a sigh of relief and carried the beast back to his residence. The beast had fainted. "Why is it that whenever I see her, I feel so nervous? My emotions fluctuate too much when she is near," thought Jiang Hao. "I have been advancing too quickly, but my mind can't keep up. I've been advancing too quickly, but my mind can't keep up." He returned to the courtyard. When he got there, he found Hong Yuye sitting elegantly on a wooden chair in the courtyard. Her gaze was focused on the heavenly fragrance Dao flower. The wooden chairs and table weren't there before. Jiang Hao didn't know where they came from. He didn't ask. "How do you care for the flower?" Hong Yuye suddenly asked. Jiang Hao was stunned. He wondered if she thought he had not taken care of it properly. He cleared his throat to respond. "I water it with a bowl of water." "Every day?" Hong Yuye asked. "Yes." "Chem. Is that so?" Hong Yuye was then silent. Jiang Hao placed the spirit beast on the ground in the corner and waited. He saw that Hong Yuye still had her eyes on the flower. He brought out some tea from his house and placed it on the table. He then marked the area for the spirit beast to prevent it from escaping. After he was done with that, he stood beside her silently. Have you practiced the 7 forms of Heavenly Blade? Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. How many have you been able to master? Just the first, said Jiang Hao truthfully. He had spent a long time on the first form of the Heavenly Blade, moonslaying. He had yet to master it completely. It would take time for him to learn the rest. The other forms were even more difficult, and there was the case of cultivation level restrictions. He couldn't learn them all at once even if he wanted to. Hong Yuye didn't say anything further. She just picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Then, she placed the teacup on the table in disdain. Next time, make some tea that is at least drinkable. What kind of tea do you prefer? Azure red, spring of September. Jiang Hao had heard of the tea before, but he had never tasted it. It was a top-grade tea type that was exorbitantly expensive. He couldn't afford it even if he wanted to taste it. Senior, Under the cold and disdainful glare, he couldn't muster the courage to refuse. He just nodded. He knew that this woman was insanely powerful but not necessarily a good person. She was indeed a Demoness. Hong Yuye stood up and walked out of the courtyard. She turned around at the last second. Take good care of my flower. After she left, Jiang Hao stood there in silence, looking at the tea in the cup. If he knew the tea was that bad, he wouldn't have offered it at all. He sighed and glanced at the spirit beast. At least, he could raise the beast now. Jiang Hao was still curious about something. He needed to know if she possessed the Heaven Extinction Yin Jiyu poison and if it had the same effect on her as it did on him. He decided to visit the library. Chapter 44. Chapter 44. Chapter 44, Gold Legend +1. Jiang Hao was even more confused after his visit to the library. The scriptures and scrolls did talk about the Heaven Extinction Jiyu poison but mentioned nothing about its origins. The Yin Jiyu poison and the Yang Jiyu poison were similar in their effect. The one who consumed it would stay in a sage-like state at all times, except when they saw the person who had consumed the other poison. Jiang Hao was still in doubt whether it made her emotions fluctuate as it did with him. She was a Demoness who was likely very experienced and powerful. It was unlikely that she would feel the effect of the poison at an extreme as he did. It made him feel like he was at a constant disadvantage. The next morning, Jiang Hao used the daily appraisal on the spirit beast. There was no problem with the beast anymore. He was relieved and continued feeding it spirit stones. 7 days later, Jiang Hao walked to the courtyard to check on the spirit beast. He was disappointed to see that there was no purple gold bubble for him. The spirit beast was pooping a little way off. When it saw Jiang Hao, it was so startled and hid behind a spirit herb bush. It bared its fangs at Jiang Hao. It was more aggressive than usual, but there was no sign of activation of a hidden bloodline. Jiang Hao was puzzled. He used the daily appraisal, but the information he got was the same as before. There were no changes. Jiang Hao sighed and threw another spirit stone toward it. He then observed the beast. He did not go to the spirit herb garden today as per his routine. Instead, he stayed home and secretly observed the beast. The spirit beast didn't do anything unusual. It ran around the courtyard and occasionally nibbled on some spirit herbs. Jiang Hao watched it the whole day and vet happened. On the next day, he used the daily appraisal on the beast again. The information was the same as before. Jiang Hao was even more confused now. Why isn't anything happening? He wondered. Maybe the beast shouldn't be allowed to eat anything else except the spirit stones for it to awaken the bloodline. It has been nibbling on spirit herbs the past few days. He grabbed the beast and tied it to a rope which was then tied to a pillar in the courtyard. Jiang Hao threw a spirit stone at it. It nibbled on it. Then, the beast began to struggle to be let free. Jiang Hao gave it a spirit stone and observed it. He used the daily appraisal the next day. Jiang Hao sighed. At least, there was some change. For the next 6 days, Jiang Hao kept it tied and fed it spirit stones. The spirit beast didn't have the intelligence to understand the situation. It only assumed it had done something wrong. On the 7th day, the spirit beast changed slightly. A gold bubble floated beside it. Jiang Hao was happy. His hard work was finally being rewarded. Although it wasn't the purple gold bubble he had hoped for, he realized that this was good, too. He had never seen a gold bubble before. When he got close, the gold bubble flew toward him and fused with his body. Gold Legend and Purple Gold Legend were rare. He didn't know if the gold bubble was better than the purple gold ones. Jiang Hao opened his interface. What? I need 2 gold legends to obtain it. Where can I find another? Seeing that he couldn't obtain it directly, Jiang Hao understood that gold bubbles were even more difficult to farm. It was a pity he didn't have another gold bubble. He didn't know how he could get his hands on one more gold bubble. It was so difficult to find purple bubbles, let alone gold. Jiang Hao looked at the spirit beast. He used the daily appraisal on it. Instantly, he received the information. Jiang Hao heaved a sigh of relief. He could still feed the beast. There was a possibility that he could obtain more gold bubbles. It would take as long as 49 days, and 7 spirit stones a day. Although the number of spirit stones to be fed was a lot, Jiang Hao felt that he could manage it if he kept earning more spirit stones consistently. Hao didn't want to make a mistake for fear that it would drag out for another 49 days. That would mean starting over and a waste of the previous 343 spirit stones. The poor spirit beast had no chance for freedom. The days passed quickly. Jiang Hao didn't leave the Cliff of Broken Hearts at that time. He didn't want to risk it. He had also exhausted his spirit stones. Fortunately, he saw a gold bubble appear on the last day. Chapter 45. Chapter 45. Chapter 45. Primordial Heavenly Blade. Jiang Hao had remained careful and vigilant for more than a month. Fortunately, no one had come looking for him. Even Liu Xingchen hadn't approached him to report on the Jinju Heng case. Perhaps Liu Xingchen was busy or he had chosen to turn to the other side. Either way, Jiang Hao couldn't help it. He couldn't control other people's decisions. No other spies had approached him yet. Everyone knew that he had captured the spirit beast, but no one had come to claim it. The days passed by peacefully. He received the gold bubbles steadily. Jiang Hao opened his interface. My lifeblood and cultivation have improved. It's much faster than before. His lifeblood and cultivation might be full in another half a year. He could then try to advance to the intermediate stage of the Golden Core realm. Perhaps in a few more years, his cultivation would surpass Liu Xingchen's. Senior sister Ming Yi was also in the early stage of the Golden Core realm. Although she was still stronger than him, he was in much less danger than before. If she decided to blow her disguise and attack him, he needed to be able to fend for himself. It was better to plan a sneak attack and ambush her if he wasn't confident in his ability. After making sure he had absorbed the gold bubble, Jiang Hao stood up and walked to the well to wash his hands. Gold bubbles were very rare. They could either hold something extraordinary or entirely useless. He hoped he could get something good out of it. He had spent far too much effort, energy, and spirit stones for this to go to waste. Jiang Hao walked into his house and sat cross-legged on the floor of his room. He chose to obtain whatever the gold legend would offer. In an instant, he felt endless chaos. He stared at it in shock while something moved in that chaos. A crisp sound rang out. Clang. Something fell and the chaos retreated. When it cleared out in the middle, Jiang Hao saw that it was a silver-white saber that had fallen from above and split the chaotic energy. It was impaled on the ground and stood upright before him. He grabbed the hilt of the saber and pulled it out of the floor. There was a loud boom when the saber was freed, and everything around him disappeared. The chaos cleared up. Jiang Hao looked around. His house was exactly as it had been before. Nothing had changed. He held the saber in his hand. He felt the urge to split the sky open with it. Its power surged in a majestic wave. Jiang Hao felt its power. This saber could kill anything, even someone at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. He would even dare fight someone at the intermediate stage with this blade in hand. In fact, he looked forward to it. Jiang Hao sighed at his thoughts. The saber had caused his emotions to run wild. He was thinking recklessly. Upon closer inspection, he found that the sleek blade was about 3 feet long and 3 centimeters wide. This saber looks pretty cool. I can feel a biting cold from just touching it. I wonder. He was curious about the origin of the blade. He activated the daily appraisal. Shiyu. Jiang Hao thought it was an odd name for a blade. However, names didn't matter. The saber was powerful. Now that he was on the path of learning the 7 forms of heavenly blade, it was only fitting to use a saber like this. Besides, he wasn't wealthy. No matter how many spirit stones he could save, he had no chance of buying something as precious as this. Jiang Hao looked at the spirit beast which was tied outside in the courtyard. It wasn't struggling anymore. Now that it had gained intelligence, it understood the situation. It had become used to being tied. So, it accepted this as the normal way of life. It sat in silence and patiently waited for someone to feed it. Jiang Hao waved the saber. The cold surged and swept across the courtyard. The spirit beast, which was staring at Jiang Hao, trembled in fear. The rope snapped, and it fell to the ground in submission. Jiang Hao saw the trembling beast and shook his head. He stared at the saber. He began to refine the blade. Although he wanted to practice the 7 forms of heavenly blade, he decided not to use Shiyu and keep it as his trump card. Therefore, he resolved to buy some other saber for now. He wanted to keep this special blade hidden away. The half-moon blade he possessed presently was enough for now. If it cracked, he would change it to something else. I need to check up on the beast. Jiang Hao wanted to know if he could keep feeding the spirit beast to activate its bloodline further. If that was possible, he could get more gold bubbles. The next day, Jiang Hao used the daily appraisal on the spirit beast. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.